Rumors spread like wildfire as people whispered about the mysterious dragon man standing in the same spot for days, muttering nonsense. Vulcan pondered the situation, wondering why the dragons hadn't made a move yet, his thoughts racing with confusion and concern. The dragon man's gaze suddenly shifted, his eyes locking onto something in the distance. Vulcan realized he was the target of the dragon man's stare and panicked, wondering if his mana had been sensed. The dragon man sneered, recognizing Vulcan as the ghost who had been lurking around, putting on an awkward act. Vulcan's anger flared at the insult, his pride wounded by the dragon man's words. Descending to confront the dragon man, Vulcan declared that he could gauge his opponent's strength, despite his own being unknown. The dragon man stood stunned as Vulcan addressed him as a young dragon, the tension between them palpable. Fury consumed the dragon man as he demanded to know how dare Vulcan call him a dragon, threatening him with death. As the sun set, the clock tower stood tall on the outskirts of the 10th floor, casting long shadows across the landscape. The protagonist strolled along, frustrated that Vulcan hadn't returned yet, wondering what he was up to and why he wasn't responding. Still wondering where Vulcan had disappeared to, he pushed open a door, calling out to see if anyone was inside. A voice welcomed him, but the room seemed empty, leaving him confused. A figure appeared, introducing himself as Ken, the climber in charge of the Tower of Class Change. He commented on how empty the place was. Ken explained that very few people awaken their mana on the 10th floor, and there were only flies flying around. He asked if he could use the necromancer's room. Ken agreed but said he needed to prove he had awakened his mana first. Ken handed him a crystal orb and instructed him to fill it with mana to prove his abilities. He asked if he just needed to channel mana into it. Ken confirmed, saying he just needed to think about using mana and slowly infuse it. He grabbed the orb, ready to give it a try. Purple mana began to flow out of the orb, surprising everyone. Ken couldn't believe it. How could a 10th floor climber have this much mana? The orb started to crack under the pressure of the immense mana. With a final burst, the orb shattered completely, sending Ken tumbling to the ground. Ken was stunned, barely able to speak. The crystal had shattered. He asked where the necromancer's room was, eager to move forward. Elsewhere, a large soul soldier stood tall, ready for battle. In a swift motion, the soul soldier was cut in half, defeated. A powerful dragon guy stood nearby, his aura dominating the scene. Vulcan appeared, looking concerned. He muttered that this was bad. Without Cha Jinhyuk, his mana and souls were limited. Vulcan's concern was quickly overshadowed as the ground cracked beneath a furious dragon-like figure. With a roar, he demanded to know how long his opponent would hide behind souls, taunting him to come out and fight. The crowd gasped as they noticed the horns on the dragon-like figure. There was no doubt about it, he was something more than just a man. The dragon-like figure's anger flared as someone from the crowd yelled out that he was a dragon. Enraged, the dragon-like figure yelled at the crowd to shut up and asked who they were calling a dragon. The crowd, terrified, began to run away. Vulcan observed the dragon-like figure and concluded that he was definitely a dragon. But he noticed something strange. The dragon-like figure was reacting sensitively to the word, dragon. Vulcan pondered the possibility of the dragon-like figure's body and soul being separated. He wondered if such a thing was even possible. Suddenly, Vulcan recalled the main character and was shocked. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Vulcan's fascination as a researcher took over. He laughed as he felt his soul power overflowing, ready to be used. Vulcan condensed his soul power and turned it into a weapon, ready to strike. The dragon-like figure was surprised to see Vulcan using a soul as a weapon. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Vulcan declared his intention to examine the substance inside the dragon-like figure's body, curious about what he might find. With a swift motion, Vulcan shot out a powerful purple beam, yelling "Soul Laser" as he did so. The dragon-like figure quickly dodged the attack, smirking as he realized that Vulcan wasn't just a measly ghost. Vulcan explained that spirit power was magic that consumed souls as if it were mana. It was a technique that even his rival couldn't use yet. Vulcan introduced himself as the first spirit master, warning the dragon-like figure that he would regret picking a fight with him. The dragon-like figure dodged Vulcan's multiple beams, questioning if they were really introducing themselves at that moment. The dragon-like figure suddenly appeared in front of Vulcan, clearly frustrated with the situation. He slashed at Vulcan, but Vulcan managed to block the attack. Hendrik introduced himself as the Dragon Slayer, declaring that he would send the dragon to Nirvana. Vulcan was taken aback, questioning what a Dragon Slayer was. Vulcan pondered the title of Dragon Slayer, given to those who subjugate dragons, and was shocked that such a strong soul ended up in a dragon's body. Hendrik's eyes glowed red as Vulcan realized the gravity of the situation. Hendrik summoned a large red dragon that clashed onto the ground. Vulcan teleported away, admitting he was careless because Hendrik was a young dragon but acknowledged the potential threat if Hendrik truly had the soul of a dragon slayer and was a 7800 floor climber. Vulcan warned that even if Cha Jin-hyuk came, he couldn't guarantee a win. Vulcan's weapon surged with power as he prepared for the next move. Hendrik lifted his blade, determined not to be hit by Vulcan's attack again. Vulcan used Soul Bind, attempting to restrain Hendrik. A massive purple magic hand descended from above. Hendrik slashed at the incoming attack. He unleashed a barrage of slashes, declaring it as the 10,000 slashes. Hendrik looked up, assessing the situation. A massive purple hand loomed over him as Vulcan prepared his next move, Soul Bind. As the massive purple hand loomed over him, Hendrik stood stunned, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and disbelief. Vulcan's next move, Soul Bind, hung in the air like an impending doom, and Hendrik couldn't help but feel like he was about to be on the receiving end of something truly terrifying. With a thunderous crash, the massive hand slammed down, obliterating the house beneath it. Vulcan's voice echoed through the chaos, a chilling declaration of his power. Jan. The sheer force of the impact sent shockwaves through the ground, leaving everyone in awe of the sheer destruction. The dust settled, and Vulcan let out a sigh of relief. That was way too close. He had burned through all the souls and mana Cha Jin-hyuk had temporarily lent him. Vulcan figured his opponent wouldn't be going anywhere for a while. This was his chance to make a move. But just as he was about to make his escape, the massive hand started to shake. Oh, time to bounce. A red slash mark appeared out of nowhere, cutting through the tension. Hendrik broke free with a scream, shaking off whatever was holding him back. He locked eyes with Vulcan, remembering his name and clearly not happy about it. Hendrik laughed maniacally, swearing to slice Vulcan into pieces next time they met. With a dramatic flourish, he pointed his sword up, sealing his promise. Meanwhile, Cha Jin-hyuk and Ken were checking out a place with a ton of rooms, each with different magical vibes. Ken couldn't help but wonder about Cha Jin-hyuk. He was a climber, but even as a 30-floor climber himself, Ken knew he was outmatched. Cha Jin-hyuk pondered Ken's name, thinking he seemed like a decent mage and a useful guide. Ken pushed open a door, revealing the necromancer's room. Inside, scrolls floated in the air, filled with mana, waiting to be discovered. Cha Jin-hyuk's eyes widened as he took in the sight before him. The room was a necromancer's dream come true, filled with reagents, corpses, and ancient books. It was like finding a treasure trove of dark knowledge and power. As Ken prepared to leave, he offered his assistance one last time. Cha Jin-hyuk acknowledged him with a simple affirmation, his mind already racing with the possibilities that lay before him in this grim chamber. With a determined look, Cha Jin-hyuk signaled his spirit fox to start sniffing around the room. It was time to get to work and uncover the secrets hidden within these ancient texts and relics. Suddenly, the spirit fox halted, its attention drawn to something unseen. The atmosphere in the room shifted, and an air of anticipation filled the space. Cha Jin-hyuk's eyes widened in surprise as he recognized the presence that had entered the room. It was Vulcan, his unexpected ally and fellow spirit user. Cha Jin-hyuk couldn't help but wonder where Enos was, but Vulcan assured him that there was no need to worry. He had just been a bit too enthusiastic with his morning exercise. Vulcan noticed that Cha Jin-hyuk was about to start something important. Cha Jin-hyuk confirmed his suspicions, explaining that he aimed to harness spirit power just like Vulcan did. With a commanding voice, Cha Jin-hyuk ordered the spirit soldiers to get to work. They sprang into action, ready to carry out his bidding. The spirit soldiers began picking up the ancient books scattered around the room, their spectral hands carefully handling the fragile tomes. Cha Jin-hyuk started writing on a board, his hand moving swiftly as he jotted down notes and instructions for the spirits to follow. He lit candles around the room, their flickering flames casting eerie shadows on the walls. The atmosphere grew tense as the preparations continued. The spirit soldiers positioned themselves around Cha Jin-hyuk, forming a protective circle as he stood at the center, ready to begin the ritual. The spirit fox watched intently, its eyes reflecting the candlelight as it observed the scene unfolding before it. Vulcan, sensing the gravity of the situation, picked up the spirit fox and stepped back, giving Cha Jin-hyuk the space he needed to focus. Cha Jin-hyuk's voice echoed through the chamber as he gave his final command. This might be his last order, and he needed Vulcan to listen carefully. With a serious tone, Cha Jin-hyuk instructed Vulcan to protect his body until he woke up. The fate of his physical form rested in Vulcan's hands. Vulcan, ever the loyal friend, warned Cha Jin-hyuk to be careful. He joked that if Cha Jin-hyuk died, he would take over his body, adding a touch of levity to the tense moment. As the ritual began, a large soul materialized above Cha Jinhyuk, its ethereal form pulsating with energy. The room filled with an otherworldly presence, and the air grew thick with anticipation. The soul let out a noise, a haunting sound that echoed through the chamber. It was a sign that the ritual was underway, and the spirits were responding to Cha Jinhyuk's call. As the haunting echo faded, the summoned soul turned its gaze toward Cha Jinhyuk, locking eyes with him as if sizing him up. Without warning, the soul surged forward, merging into Cha Jinhyuk's body in a sudden, eerie flash. Nearby, the fox companion freaked out, its fur standing on end as it sensed the unnatural energy shift. Vulcan, ever the chill one, just leaned back and casually mentioned that everything was going according to plan. He then dropped some knowledge about spirit power being a major flex for necromancers, letting them use souls like mana. Vulcan continued, saying the quickest way to unlock that power was to dip into a soul state. Translation: Cha Jinhyuk basically had to die once to make it happen. No big deal. Suddenly, Cha Jinhyuk stopped moving, his body going completely still. Vulcan observed closely before nodding to himself, muttering that it seemed like Cha Jinhyuk had entered the soul world. The scene shifted, and Cha Jinhyuk found himself in a strange, misty realm, the soul world. Back in the real world, Vulcan turned sharply as a portal burst open, and spirits started pouring out, screaming about needing a healthy body. The spirits swarmed, desperate for a chance to live again, their voices overlapping in a chaotic frenzy. They circled around Cha Jinhyuk's body, fighting over it like it was the last slice of pizza. Vulcan wasn't having it, though. He summoned his soul soldiers, ordering them to protect Cha Jinhyuk from the ghostly mob. The soldiers moved swiftly, grabbing the wandering souls and holding them back as they thrashed and screamed. One of the spirits yelled at the soldiers to let go, calling them names, but the soul soldiers held firm, keeping the chaotic spirits at bay. The soul soldiers were holding their own, but things were about to get lit. Vulcan wasn't playing around. He whipped out a soul laser like it was the latest gaming gear, ready to blast his way through the chaos. Meanwhile, Ken swung open a door like he was about to walk into the most unexpected house party ever. His eyes widened as he spotted something wild. Was that Sir Climber? And what in the world was going on here? Ken's brain short-circuited for a second. Souls were throwing hands, and it looked like a full-on brawl in the spirit realm. His face screamed pure confusion. What even was this madness? Vulcan, still in full battle mode, spotted Ken and yelled over the chaos. Dude, are you the manager here? Because this place is a mess, and he could really use a hand. Off to the side, a little fox was hiding, trembling like it just witnessed the scariest horror movie ever. Nope, this was not the vibe it signed up for. The fox peeked out, curiosity getting the better of it. What was even happening out there? Then it spotted a wandering soul just floating around like it owned the place. Oh, this didn't look good. The wandering soul suddenly darted toward the main character like it had just found the ultimate loot. It screamed something about foolish bastards and an undefended side. Yikes. Ken and Vulcan locked eyes, both realizing the same thing at once. Over there, toward the climber. Vulcan's face dropped. This was bad. Vulcan yelled at the main character to get a grip, like literally. His body was about to get jacked by that wandering soul if he didn't move it. The little fox, done with hiding, leaped into action like it just activated its ultimate ability. With a flash of pink magic, the fox stopped the wandering soul dead in its tracks. Boom, mic drop. The fox was glowing with pink magic, looking like it just pulled off the coolest trick in the book. Who knew such a little guy had it in them? The room was suddenly filled with a radiant glow, the baby fox's magic lighting up everything around it. Vulcan and Ken were left stunned, their minds racing with confusion as they tried to comprehend the source of the mysterious light. The wandering souls were terrified, their voices echoing with panic as they struggled to understand what was happening. But suddenly, their fear turned to awe as they laid eyes on the baby fox, its cuteness overwhelming their senses. One by one, the wandering souls succumbed to the baby fox's charm, falling down in a daze. Even Vulcan's soul soldiers weren't immune, their tough exteriors crumbling as they too were captivated. Ken was utterly smitten, his usual composure gone as he fawned over the adorable creature. Vulcan tried to snap him out of it, but even his voice lacked its usual authority. Vulcan couldn't help but wonder if this was some kind of charm at work, a power that went beyond mere cuteness. As he looked at the baby fox, he pondered if its divine heritage had something to do with its extraordinary allure. Just as he was lost in thought about the baby fox's divine heritage, a soul skeleton emerged, complaining about the noise. The massive green soul skeleton appeared, exclaiming in surprise and commenting on the total chaos. Vulcan was stunned, recognizing the skeleton as a named one, a strong climber before his death. Vulcan realized the danger if the skeleton possessed Cha Jinhyuk's body, but the skeleton was more interested in a fresh body. Vulcan attempted to charge, determined to stop the skeleton, but his legs gave out. Vulcan struggled, still under the charm's effect, unable to muster his strength. Vulcan turned to the baby fox, urging Miho to stop the skeleton. The soul skeleton dismissed the baby fox, showing no interest in the furball. The baby fox charged at the soul skeleton, surprising everyone. The soul skeleton was confused, taken aback by the baby fox's sudden attack. The baby fox used its power, unleashing an unexpected energy. The soul skeleton was shocked, sensing the mystical creature's energy. A heart shape shot out from the baby fox, leaving everyone in awe. Vulcan was amazed, wondering how Miho had used up all her power and if the charm was her limit. The soul skeleton swung its sword, expressing its fear of being challenged by something so small. The baby fox cried, its fate hanging in the balance as the soul skeleton's sword swung down. Just as the sword was about to strike the baby fox, a charged soul beam blasted through the room. The beam hit its mark, shooting the soul skeleton's arm clean off. Vulcan stood there, stunned, his mind racing to process what just happened. Cha Jinhyuk turned to Miho, gratitude evident in his voice as he thanked her for the timely assist. Then he turned back to the soul skeleton, his tone icy as he declared its impending demise, calling it a ghost bastard. The soul skeleton seethed with anger, its fury palpable. Cha Jinhyuk began sucking in the soul's energy, taunting that even as a ghost, it would make a good bullet. The souls around them started getting sucked into the vortex of energy he was creating. The soul skeleton, enraged, launched an attack, its fury echoing through the room. Cha Jinhyuk stood firm, mana glowing on all his fingertips, ready for what was coming next. With a swift motion, he unleashed a 10-fingered soul bullet, the power surging through the room. The force was so strong it blasted through the walls, beaming out to the world outside. Vulcan watched in awe, muttering about how Cha Jinhyuk gathered spirit power onto his fingertips and shot it, impressed by the simplicity and raw power. A massive hole appeared in the wall, the clouds visible through the gaping void. Cha Jinhyuk took off his mask, a smirk playing on his lips as he asked if that wasn't bad. Meanwhile, Ken was fast asleep, oblivious to the chaos around him. Ken was still deep in dreamland, but suddenly, a puppet walked in, taking in the scene with a mix of shock and disbelief. The puppet's eyes widened as he surveyed the destroyed room, utterly stunned by the sheer chaos. Ken finally stirred, noticing the puppet and wondering why he was there. The puppet, snapping out of his shock, mentioned he had something to give him. The puppet brought out a suitcase, explaining that among the items Ken had requested, there were some that couldn't be stored in the subspace coat. He listed deadly poisons of varying potency, a fire stone containing fire energy, and a frost stone containing ice energy. Vulcan observed the items, impressed by how quickly the puppet had gotten them. Ken, however, was more curious about the puppet's intentions. Ken asked if the puppet wasn't supposed to use these items for raids on the floors above the 100th. The puppet confirmed that was indeed the plan. He revealed that this delivery was his last task as the branch manager of the 100th floor, and that he planned to return as a climber and scale the tower again. Ken listened intently, intrigued by the puppet's determination. The puppet explained that he felt the need to become stronger, not just as a merchant but as a climber. He admitted that as a merchant, he had set the top as his goal, but seeing the impact of climbers like Ken and Gold Lich, he realized Ken was someone who would bring big changes to the tower. The puppet confessed that with only the skills of a 100th floor climber, he couldn't claim to be the best merchant. Ken nodded in approval, seeing a bit of himself in the puppet's determination. He compared the puppet's resolve to that of Gold Lich back in the day. Ken promised that once the puppet obtained the proper skills, he would tell him about his plans and those of Gold Lich. The puppet bowed gratefully, excited to hear exactly what he wanted and thanking Ken for the opportunity. With the puppet gone, the room fell silent, the weight of the moment lingering in the air. Vulcan's eyes widened as he realized the puppet had vanished, leaving him in disbelief. Cha Jinhyuk, on the other hand, seemed to accept the situation with a calm resolve. Cha Jinhyuk settled in front of a collection of items, a smirk playing on his lips as he contemplated the power he was about to unleash. Vulcan, still processing the situation, turned to Cha Jinhyuk with a mix of shock and curiosity, questioning if he was really about to do what he thought he was. Cha Jinhyuk picked up a mana stone, his expression confident and determined, as if there was no other reason for his actions. He explained that his gluttony trait would allow him to absorb the power of the items he consumed, turning them into his own strength. With a defiant glance at Vulcan, Cha Jinhyuk popped the mana stone into his mouth, unconcerned about the potential backlash or the immense power he was about to acquire. As Cha Jinhyuk boldly swallowed the mana stone, Ken suddenly opened his eyes, letting out a groggy hum. Ken's eyes widened as he jolted upright, panic flashing across his face. He tried to warn Mr. Clymer about some impending danger. Before Ken could finish his warning, Vulcan's voice cut through the tension. Ken, still disoriented, stammered as he tried to make sense of his surroundings. Ken's concern for Mr. Clymer and the fox was palpable, but Vulcan quickly reassured him that both were fine. Vulcan hesitated for a moment, his expression shifting as if reconsidering his previous statement. Ken, now fully awake and alert, demanded to know what Vulcan meant by his uncertain tone. A loud scream echoed through the air, startling everyone present. Cha Jinhyuk was spitting out flames, his body convulsing as if struggling to contain an overwhelming power. His screams grew louder, the intensity of the flames increasing with each passing moment. The fox, trembling in fear, watched the chaotic scene unfold with wide, terrified eyes. The nine-tailed fox quickly signaled to Cha Jinhyuk, warning him not to display such frightening behavior in front of its offspring. Cha Jinhyuk, seemingly regaining control, began to consume the flames, his body absorbing the fiery energy. With a deep breath, he huffed, the flames now completely subdued within him. As the flames vanished, a system notification appeared, announcing that he had obtained burn resistance. Cha Jinhyuk, now left with poison resistance, pondered his newfound abilities. Cha Jinhyuk was still reeling from his newfound resistances, but the pain was far from over. Vulcan couldn't believe his eyes as Cha forced himself through even more agony, chugging poison like it was some kind of twisted smoothie. Vulcan yelled at him, asking why on earth he was torturing himself like this. Cha, ever the dramatic hero, shot back that he needed all of it, every last drop. Cha wasn't just winging it, though. He had a plan, and it involved mastering the combat techniques of the 9-star. To do that, he needed to prep himself with resistances to all kinds of nasty stuff, poison included. Especially poison. Among the 9 stars, there was one particularly sneaky bastard who specialized in it. Cha wasn't about to get caught off guard again. Not after the horrifying way he died last time. Just then, Vulcan showed up, greeting Cha like it was just another day in their bizarre, action-packed lives. Vulcan, ever the practical one, got straight to business, asking if these were all the orcs in the area. Cha nodded, confirming that they had taken care of the local orc population. With the orcs dealt with, Cha turned his attention to his little fox companion, who had been patiently waiting. It was time to eat, and Cha wasn't about to let the fox go hungry. Vulcan, ever the concerned friend, asked if they needed to remove the liver. Cha, ever the practical one, pointed out that the fox was still just a baby, at least if you considered her human. The fox, with its sharp little teeth, didn't waste any time. It went straight for the corpse, ready to chow down. The fox dug in, and Vulcan couldn't help but ask if the fox was really okay with this. Meanwhile, Cha's quest counter ticked up, showing progress on his raw livers collection. With the fox done eating, Cha and Vulcan continued on their way, walking through the city. Cha mentioned he'd like to start something big, but given the size of the city, attracting too much attention probably wasn't the best idea. As they strolled, Cha couldn't help but notice something was off with Vulcan. He asked what was up, if Vulcan had been fighting with someone last night. Vulcan, caught off guard, asked how Cha knew. Cha, ever the observant one, pointed out that his mana had been fluctuating. He asked who it was if Vulcan had met one of the 4 royalties. Vulcan, impressed, admitted that Cha had figured it out immediately. Vulcan confirmed Cha's suspicions, leaving Cha to wonder just what kind of trouble they might be in now. Cha couldn't shake off the feeling of impending trouble, and Vulcan didn't help by casually mentioning he had just fought with a dragon. Not just any dragon, but a really strong one. Vulcan continued, explaining that he managed to stop the dragon using his spirit power. Cha listened, feeling a mix of awe and dread. Cha's power surged as he processed the information. One of the 4 royalties was here? Vulcan quickly told Cha to calm down, warning him not to emit demonic energy in the middle of their location. Cha struggled to contain his emotions. Suddenly, Cha coughed up blood, his body reacting violently to the stress and the demonic energy. Cha wondered if this was a side effect of gluttony, but Vulcan repeated his earlier warning for Cha to calm down. Vulcan explained that the dragon wasn't average. Cha asked what he meant by that, his curiosity piqued despite his condition. Vulcan took some time to explain what had happened, leaving Cha to ponder the implications. Cha muttered about the dragon slayer, Hendrik, The name sent a chill down his spine. Vulcan confirmed that was indeed the name. Cha couldn't believe it, arguing that it didn't make sense for a body and soul to act independently. Cha continued to express his disbelief, trying to rationalize the situation. Vulcan admitted he had also denied it at first but had witnessed an example right in front of him. Cha finally seemed to understand, adding that if it was Hendrik, the Dragon Slayer, even he knew of that name. Cha recalled how Hendrik started his climb by killing young dragons and then moved on to other dragons that came after him, earning the title of Dragon Slayer. Cha Jinhyuk thought about Hendrik's legendary climb and his eventual fall somewhere around the 700th or 800th floor. Valkan, ever the voice of reason, suggested that this might just be a trap set by the four royalties. Cha couldn't help but smile at the thought of meeting Hendrik, the infamous Dragon Slayer. The idea of facing off against such a legend was exciting. Valkan was quick to point out that Cha's gluttony trait was acting up again, causing him to cough repeatedly. He warned Cha that consuming too much could lead to serious internal injuries. Valkan explained that Cha's gluttony trait was broken, and there was a penalty for consuming things like the fire and frost stone. He urged Cha to get his internal injuries treated quickly. Cha was taken aback by the suggestion of being treated by a priest. He couldn't imagine himself and his spirit soldiers being purified by divine power. Valkan, however, was more concerned about Cha's health, warning him that if he continued like this, he might end up in a worse state. Cha, ever the optimist, suggested that the best method was for him to obtain divine power himself. Valkan was left speechless by Cha's crazy talk. Suddenly, a fox started growling loudly, catching Cha's attention. He wondered what was wrong with the fox. The fox continued to make loud noises, leaving Cha confused about its sudden behavior. He tried to calm the fox down, but it was no use. Valkan, sweating profusely, complained that his ear hurt from the fox's loud howls. Cha, annoyed, told the fox to be quiet. Valkan called out to Cha, noticing something odd about the people around them. He pointed out that something wasn't right with the crowd. Cha and Valkan looked around, observing the people who seemed to be walking mindlessly. Valkan was concerned, wondering why they weren't reacting to the fox's howls. The people around them were still, not reacting to the fox's howls. Valkan was puzzled, wondering what was wrong with them. Valkan wasn't sure what the reason was, but the people were all walking together mindlessly. It was a strange sight to behold. Suddenly, a gold halo appeared above Cha and Valkan, casting a divine light on them. They looked up, wondering what was happening. Cha and Valkan looked at each other, confused by the sudden appearance of the gold halo. They wondered what it meant and what was going to happen next. Just as Cha and Valkan were trying to figure out the mystery of the golden halo, a figure approached them with a warm greeting, leaving them even more puzzled. Cha's eyes widened as he realized the figure was an angel, his mind racing with questions and excitement. Cha instinctively pulled his sword from subspace, his grip tight and his expression wary, clearly not buying the friendly vibe. His hand firmly on the hilt, Cha made it clear he wasn't in the mood for pleasantries, his guard up and his trust non-existent. In a flash, the angel woman was right in front of Cha, her hand gently resting on his, urging him not to do something he'd regret. Cha was taken aback by her speed, his mind racing with questions about when she had even moved. The angel woman repeated her greeting, her voice calm and her demeanor friendly, but Cha wasn't having it. Cha was not having it, but the angel woman was not backing down either. She held his sword firmly, preventing him from drawing it. Cha struggled, but she was surprisingly strong, not budging an inch despite his efforts. Suddenly, she reached out and grabbed Cha's face, her expression turning serious. She told him that the inside of his mouth was rotten. Cha was taken aback, wondering what she was doing. She continued, telling him that his throat, stomach, and intestines were all damaged. Before Cha could react, her halo lit up, casting a soft glow around them. A beam of light shone down onto Cha, enveloping him in its warmth. Cha felt a strange sensation, his body tingling with energy. He stammered, trying to comprehend what was happening. Fox and Vulcan rushed to his side, concern etched on their faces. Vulcan shouted, asking if Cha was okay. Cha realized that his damaged body was fully recovered. He felt a surge of strength and vitality coursing through him. Cha concluded that this must be the power of the angels, divine power. The angel woman asked if he now understood that she was not his enemy. She introduced herself as Uriel, an angel affiliated with Wingless. Cha was left speechless, processing everything that had just happened. As Cha stood there, still processing the revelation about Uriel, the clock tower suddenly chimed, its deep echoes filling the air like a cosmic joke timing punchline. The sound seemed to jolt everyone back to reality. People around him blinked, shook their heads, and muttered about suddenly forgetting what they were doing, like NPCs glitching back into their loops. The crowd started moving toward the gold-rich hotel, their steps a little too synchronized, like a zombie horde with better fashion sense. Maids snapped back to attention, suddenly remembering their duties. One rubbed her head, wondering if she'd been spacing out, while another nodded in agreement, equally confused. Cha peeked through a cracked door, watching the scene unfold. He wondered if they'd all been pushing themselves too hard lately, because this was getting weird even by his standards. He shut the door behind him and muttered about not knowing what game was being played here. Uriel appeared, casually mentioning she had altered some memories to protect the citizens. She explained it would be bad if angels got wind of her presence and all rushed to the 110th floor. Cha thought about it and decided her methods were excessive but not completely reckless. Maybe even kind of clever. Memory alteration was an interesting trick. He wondered if it was too late to try it on himself to forget this whole confusing day. Uriel assured him it wouldn't work on someone with a strong ego like him. She called him Ghostface and commented on his cute mystical creature companion. She glanced around, her gaze lingering on something or someone unseen. Uriel mentioned his spirit friend next to him, the one who had been watching her since before all this chaos started. Vulcan materialized slightly, muttering about how he knew she could see him. Cha turned to Uriel, asking if she had come to find them. Uriel described someone who wore a mask, someone who condensed grotesqueness and defied the heavens themselves. Despite being weak, she claimed that this person and their followers would end up successful. Cha couldn't help but wonder if she was talking about him and his ragtag group of misfits. Cha couldn't help but wonder if the prophecy was about him and his ragtag group of misfits. But before he could dwell on it, Uriel dropped a bombshell. She wasn't here just to chat about his potential. She had a prophecy to share, one that had descended upon the mysterious group known as Wingless. Cha wondered if this prophecy was sent by Edu, given how similar it sounded to his usual dramatic flair. Uriel nodded, confirming his suspicions as she got up, ready to reveal more. Cha couldn't help but think about the mask he wore, wondering if it was a symbol of the grotesqueness the prophecy mentioned. Was it referring to him? The thought sent a chill down his spine. Cha decided to ask the burning question. What was this group, Wingless, all about? He had never heard of them before, but they seemed to know a lot about him. Uriel took off her hoodie, revealing a sight that left Cha stunned. Cha's eyes widened as he looked at Uriel. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Uriel had no wings. Cha was shocked. How could an angel not have wings? Uriel explained that the angels were currently insane, blinded by greed. They had lost their way, and those who defied them faced severe consequences. Those who defied the angels became banished, and the punishment was harsh. Uriel's missing wings were a testament to that. When an angel sinned and was banished, they received the punishment of having their wings, a symbol of the angels, ripped out. It was a cruel and brutal fate. In short, it meant you were an angel, but now you were not. Uriel was a fallen angel, stripped of her wings and her place among the angels. Wingless was a group of angels that consisted of those like Uriel. They were banished angels from Utopia, the city of angels. According to the prophecy, Cha would attempt to wreak havoc upon the four royalties' reign. It was a bold and dangerous prediction. Wingless wanted to help Cha with that. They saw something in him, something that could change the course of their fate. Cha was unsure what to do. He reached out to Vulcan telepathically, asking for his thoughts. Vulcan, ever the voice of reason, told him that Uriel wasn't lying and that he should just say yes. Cha decided to ask Uriel what type of help Wingless could provide him. He was curious and a little bit hopeful. Cha was hopeful, but Uriel's response was a cold, hard reality check. Cha was taken aback, his hopes dashed in an instant. Uriel explained that while the Wingless had immense power, Utopia had labeled them enemies and was watching them closely. Any support from the Wingless would come with the hostility of the angels. Cha weighed his options, realizing it was a stalemate. Declining an army of former angels seemed like a waste, but accepting their help came with significant risks. Despite the risks, Cha decided to ask Uriel if the Wingless would help him in a situation where their power was crucial. Uriel, with determination, agreed to help gladly. Cha was satisfied, declaring their alliance with the Wingless finalized. Uriel bowed and thanked Cha, addressing him as Ghostface. Cha realized he hadn't introduced himself yet. Cha asked Uriel if she could blind both God and the devil. Uriel, taken aback, asked for a moment. Uriel grabbed a feather from her back. She blew the feather, and it began to glow. Feathers surrounded them, transporting them to a different dimension. Cha noted that this had a similar principle to the skill that Gold Rich used. Cha asked if those bastards could really not hear them. Uriel confirmed that even if he cussed at them, there wouldn't be a problem. Cha took off his mask and asked how about this. Cha yelled at Ball, calling him a voyeuristic sick bastard and asking if he was listening. Cha's words hung in the air as Uriel stood there, stunned, her mouth forming a perfect little O of surprise. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Cha couldn't help but smile, relieved that his plans seemed to be working. Uriel, still processing everything, blurted out a confused question about why space had done. Well, whatever it had done. Cha, feeling like they were in this together, pointed out the obvious. If they were on the same team, wouldn't it be better to drop the fake name and mask? It was time to get real. Cha decided to lay it all out there. He introduced himself as Cha Jinhyuk, dropping the bombshell that he was the one and only Death Star from 10 years ago. Mic drop. Uriel's eyes widened so much it looked like they might pop out. She was clearly not expecting that plot twist. The shock was too much for Uriel. She fell to her knees, her legs giving out. Cha rushed to her side, calling out to her in concern. Uriel stammered out an apology, her voice barely above a whisper. She felt like a total failure, her incompetence weighing heavily on her. Cha paused, his expression softening as he looked at Uriel. There was something familiar about her, something that tugged at his memories. It hit him like a ton of bricks. He knew her. She was the Uriel who knew him from 10 years ago, the Cha Jinhyuk who had supposedly died. Plot twist indeed. Uriel, her voice barely above a whisper, mentioned something about 10 years ago. It was at the place where his death was discussed. Cha's mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle. Cha's face darkened with rage as Uriel let slip that she couldn't prevent something. Whatever it was, it clearly struck a nerve and not in a good way. Cha's rage was palpable, and as he stepped forward, the ground cracked beneath him. He warned Uriel to choose her next words carefully. His intense aura flared as he demanded her to be wise about what she was going to say next. Uriel, unfazed, posed a question about what happens when someone reaches the 999th floor of the tower. Cha scoffed, suggesting that the climber probably becomes a voyeurist, a transcendent being like a god or demon that manages the tower. Uriel explained that the angels, the four royalties, were consumed by their superiority and tried to monopolize that position. In the end, they eliminated anyone who tried to conquer the tower, even themselves. Cha was stunned, muttering about selecting and killing. Uriel asked if Cha knew about it. Cha responded that it was just a guess, but now he was certain. His mana power surged out as he declared that the mastermind was in front of him. Furious, Cha threatened to send Uriel's head to where her wings were. Soul hands suddenly grabbed Uriel, tightening their grip. Uriel began to explain that was the reason why she became wingless. As the mana hands gripped tighter, she revealed that she had become wingless 10 years ago. Cha, taken aback, asked what she meant. Uriel explained that she became wingless because she opposed carrying out the select and kill on a certain climber. Uriel revealed the name of the climber she had refused to kill, Dester, Cha Jinhyuk. The name hung in the air, heavy with implication. Cha Jinhyuk was stunned, realizing that Uriel was referring to him. The revelation hit him like a ton of bricks. Cha Jinhyuk released Uriel, stepping back as the weight of her words sank in. Cha Jinhyuk apologized for his behavior, acknowledging that he had acted indecently. Uriel reassured him, saying it was all right and that the issue was her burden to bear. Cha Jinhyuk waved it off, stating that he didn't want to take his anger out on her. He understood that the wingless and the angels were different species. Uriel thanked him for understanding, her voice soft with gratitude. Uriel suggested that, like them, there might be other victims of the four royalties. She recommended accepting them if they approached. Cha Jinhyuk agreed, noting that no matter where he went, there was a diverse range of people. He acknowledged that there were definitely others who were exiled by the four royalties. Winning them over could be a great help in the war against the four royalties. Cha Jinhyuk asked where he needed to go to meet her again. Uriel replied that the wingless base was located in the Dream City on the 190th floor. Cha Jinhyuk was surprised, noting that it was a lot lower than he thought. Uriel explained that the higher the floor, the more influence the four royalties had. She added that the floors from 200 to 300 were under his territory. Cha Jinhyuk realized that he had forgotten about that, acknowledging that it was under his ownership. He mentioned Martial Emperor Tess, who reigned over the floors from 200 to 300. If the four royalties set up their base within his territory, there was a higher possibility that they would be destroyed by Tess. Uriel asked if it wasn't rude to ask if she could get dressed. Cha Jinhyuk, realizing her state, quickly agreed. As Uriel dressed, Cha Jinhyuk couldn't help but appreciate the view, a small smile playing on his lips. As Cha Jinhyuk admired the view, a thought crossed his mind, and he asked Uriel if there would be any trace left if she gave him something. Uriel shook her head, explaining that there wouldn't be a trace, but due to the pursuit of the angels, she could only bring herself. Cha Jin-hyuk reassured her that it was all right and what she had was enough. Uriel looked at him, surprised, and asked if he was that type of person. Cha Jin-hyuk quickly explained that he wasn't that type of person and clarified that he wanted some of her feathers. Uriel, relieved, said that if it was just feathers, she could give them to him as they grew back. Cha Jin-hyuk thought to himself that he had asked carefully because he thought they didn't grow back. Uriel handed him a handful of her feathers. Uriel warned him that he must never show the feathers outside as the angels had a skill that could locate the owner of the feather. Cha Jin-hyuk told her not to worry as he planned on eating them anyway, leaving Uriel shocked and asking if he really meant to eat them. Cha Jin-hyuk quickly denied it again, saying he wasn't that type of person. Uriel decided to trust him and said she would get going, mentioning that she would see him next time at Dream City. Cha Jin-hyuk responded that he would meet her expectations. As Uriel prepared to leave, she looked back and said she looked forward to it, calling him Ghostface. With a final glance back, Uriel walked away, leaving him with the nickname Ghostface echoing in his mind. Then, just like that, she vanished into thin air, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Cha Jin-hyuk held the feather, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Valken couldn't help but ask if he was finally going to eat it, his excitement barely contained. He stared at the feather, wondering if he could endure the angel's divine power and what kind of power he might obtain from it. Valken turned away, muttering that Cha Jin-hyuk should do as he pleased, having given up on him ever since the third poison. He picked up Miho, warning her not to go around eating whatever she found. Unlike Cha Jin-hyuk. Without hesitation, Cha Jin-hyuk placed the feather in his mouth, ready to face whatever came next. He swallowed it, the feather disappearing into his mouth. Almost immediately, a sharp pain shot through his body, causing him to double over. The pain intensified, and he let out a loud scream, his voice echoing through the air. Valkan, seemingly unfazed, dismissed his screams with a casual remark, not paying any attention to his struggle. He continued playing with Miho, lifting her up for an airplane ride, oblivious to Cha Jin-hyuk's agony. Cha Jin-hyuk screamed even louder, his body racked with pain as the divine power coursed through him. The pain was too much. Cha Jin-hyuk's vision blurred, his body gave out, and he collapsed, the world fading to black as a weak groan escaped his lips. But the darkness didn't last. With a low, confused murmur, he stirred, his senses slowly returning. He found himself in a puddle of water, confusion written all over his face. Had he really fainted? And where was this place? Realization dawned on him as he looked around. This was the mind realm, a place he hadn't expected to find himself in. Cha Jin-hyuk groaned, frustration evident in his voice. If his body couldn't handle the divine power, then he would just have to win here in the mind realm. Suddenly, a light began to appear, drawing his attention. He turned to look, curiosity piqued by the unexpected sight. His eyes widened in awe as he saw a massive waterfall of light cascading down, its brilliance illuminating the mind realm. As the radiant waterfall flooded his vision, Cha Jin-hyuk was left speechless. The sheer magnitude of divine power within him felt like standing before a colossal mountain. And to think all this power was awakened by just a single feather. He couldn't help but wonder if he was relieved to avoid a fight with Yuri. Even if he had won, the thought of consuming her power made him uneasy. Shaking off the thought, he noticed the water around him beginning to rise, slowly but steadily. Wait, the water was rising? The waterfall wasn't just an illusion? This was getting real and fast. He needed to break through this waterfall of divine power before it took over his mind realm. But how? A smirk played on his lips as he pondered his next move. There was no time to waste. Well, there was no other way. He had to take a leap of faith. Back in the real world, his body began to shake violently as the mana surged through him. Vulcan watched in awe as the mana surged off Cha Jin-hyuk's body. He was using spirit power, but something felt different this time. Vulcan realized that Cha Jin-hyuk was using his own soul as the substance for the spirit power. This was unheard of. Vulcan turned to the fox, a sense of anticipation in his voice. They should believe in Cha Jin-hyuk. The fact that he had started to move meant he had a plan. Vulcan continued, don't think he was the only one looking forward to what his potential disciple could do. Now, let Cha Jin-hyuk surprise him this time. Back in the mind realm, Cha Jin-hyuk was slurping up the golden water with a mana-made straw, determined to harness the divine power within him. With each slurp, he could feel the power coursing through him, ready to be unleashed. The golden water shimmered as it flowed into him, a sight that was as mesmerizing as it was powerful. The golden water was lit, But Cha Jinhyuk was not feeling it. Something was off and he knew it. He thought creating an image of himself devouring the divine power would be the move, but it just wasn't hitting right. Since he had obtained that power through gluttony, it should have been a perfect match. But if this continued, he was going to fail. The divine power could overwhelm him, and he might lose consciousness forever or have to give up this power. He took a deep breath and told himself to chill. Freaking out wasn't going to help anyone. It was an image he was creating with his soul. He needed to approach it as himself, not some made-up version. As he focused, large mana fins began to appear around him, a sign that he was on the right track. And then, a massive purple mana shark materialized, ready to feast on the divine power.
Cha Jinhyuk smiled.
Now this was the real deal. He sent the mana shark forward, and it began to devour the divine power. Yes, this was it. He could feel the power surging through him, and it was glorious. A large mana snake appeared, coiling around him as the power continued to grow. The mana shark was loving it, devouring the divine power like it was an all-you-can-eat buffet. Cha Jinhyuk wanted more. More power, more strength, more of everything. He wasn't going to stop until he had it all. But as he craved more, everything around him started to fade into nothingness, consumed by his insatiable hunger for power. Suddenly, he found himself back in the real world, a sly smile creeping across his face. Before him stood Baal, mirroring his expression with a grin of his own. Baal, the so-called demon king of gluttony, seemed to approve of his newfound hunger. Meanwhile, in the past, a younger version of himself was deep in conversation with the Gold Lich, who was dropping some serious truth bombs about Baal. According to the Gold Lich, Baal was not just any neutral god, but a greedy dragon who indulged in all kinds of species, consuming everything in his path. His divine name was the Greedy Dragon, but his real name was something else entirely. Back in the present, Cha Jinhyuk was in his mind realm, consuming everything with his mana, his power growing exponentially. As his power surged, the loudmouth that once plagued him finally closed, silenced by his newfound strength. With his power now surging, the loudmouth that once plagued him was finally silenced. Vulcan and Fox watched as the protagonist returned, stronger than ever. Vulcan smirked, noting that he seemed to be back in full force. The protagonist pondered his return, questioning if he had truly made it back. Vulcan, ever the skeptic, asked if he had succeeded or failed. He added that, if it was a failure, he would definitely make fun of him. Vulcan sighed, muttering about how unfortunate it would be if the protagonist had failed. The protagonist, glowing with divine power, confidently declared that of course he had succeeded. He explained that although it was only the size of a small seed, he had created an organ that could produce divine power. He asked Vulcan what he thought and if he was satisfied with this result. Vulcan was taken aback, noting that for a mere human who wasn't one of the four royalties, possessing the power of the angels within his body was unheard of. Vulcan smiled, pointing out that if the angels found out about this, it wouldn't be strange if they issued a death order against him. The protagonist shrugged, mentioning that having hurt their pride, he didn't think they would settle with just a death order. It wouldn't be strange if their entire race came after him. Vulcan sweated, admitting that this really was an incredible result, but danger followed. He warned that the protagonist wasn't strong enough to overcome a focused attack from the four royalties. Vulcan continued, stating that in the incomplete state he was in, it was risky. Vulcan trailed off, hinting at the consequences if he were to challenge the four royalties. Vulcan finally declared that going against the four royalties would be a monumental task. A few days later, the sunlit forest of the 10th floor hunting ground awaited. Soul soldiers were engaged in fierce combat with orcs, their battles echoing through the forest. As the soul soldiers battled fiercely with the orcs, one of the monstrous creatures finally fell, its massive body hitting the forest floor with a thunderous crash. But the respite was short-lived. From the shadows of the dense forest, another orc emerged, its eyes burning with fury and hunger for battle. The soul soldiers, without missing a beat, launched their attack. Their movements were swift and coordinated, a blur of steel and magic clashing against the brute force of the orc. The orc, however, was not to be underestimated. With a swift and brutal strike, it managed to cut down one of the soul soldiers, sending a wave of shock and grief through the ranks. From a distance, Vulcan watched the unfolding chaos, his gaze sharp and calculating, assessing the strengths and weaknesses of both sides. Cha Jinhyuk, the protagonist, walked towards Vulcan with a determined look in his eyes, his voice steady and resolute as he declared that the true battle had now begun. The orc wasted no time and sliced through the soul soldier like it was nothing. It let out a roar so loud it could wake the dead. Suddenly, a bright light burst out from the soul soldier, catching everyone off guard. The orc wasn't having it and started freaking out, probably wondering what kind of party trick this was. Turns out it was a holy spirit soldier, not your average party guest. Meanwhile, the protagonist was just casually walking, checking out his new holy spirit soldier like it was the latest smartphone. Vulcan chimed in, saying it worked just as expected, like a proud dad watching his kid score a goal. He explained it was the exclusive healer for the undead and spirit soldiers, basically the ultimate medic. It even negates the basic necromancer mechanism, saving materials from being wasted. But there was a catch. Since divine power is divine, it seeks enlightenment. The protagonist just shrugged, saying there was nothing they could do but be careful. Suddenly, a fox appeared out of nowhere, munching on a dead orc corpse like it was a midnight snack. Vulcan noticed the fox was done eating, and the protagonist just casually asked if it was in ones. The protagonist figured they would be finished tomorrow, casually mentioning he obtained the Orc Slayer title twice, like it was no big deal. Curious, he pulled up his status window, probably wondering what other cool stuff he had unlocked. As he checked out his stats, they were looking better than ever, like he had just hit the gym for a solid month. His seed of divine power had been growing for days and was now sitting at a solid 3. Not the biggest upgrade, but hey, it could still come in handy in a pinch. Vulcan was there, wondering what to do next, looking as lost as a guy without GPS. Then he grinned because why not go see Hendrik? It was a plan, and plans were always better than just standing around. He double-checked with Vulcan, who confirmed that Hendrik was still in town, just hanging out, not climbing, and definitely waiting for someone. Hendrik, a dragon slayer chilling in a dragon's body. Perfect, because he had been wanting to meet him. If Hendrik was stuck on the 10th floor, there had to be a reason, maybe something like what Yuri had gone through after listening to those gods and demons. They walked until Vulcan pointed out an alley where Hendrik was supposedly hanging out. He looked around, trying to spot this legendary figure. And there he was, Hendrik, just chilling like he was waiting for a bus. He really was there, and then he noticed the horn. Yep, definitely a dragon. The eyes gave it away. This was no ordinary guy, this was a dragon in disguise. He was ready to just walk up and start a conversation, but Vulcan was having none of that, warning him that Hendrik might not be expecting him and that pissing him off could be a death sentence. Vulcan was basically saying, "Don't do it, man. You might not like how it ends." But he just turned and suggested they settle things the old-fashioned way with a good fight. Vulcan just stared at him like he had lost his mind, which, to be fair, might have been a valid point. Vulcan threw his hands up and told him to go ahead without him, calling him out for being scared. But he fired back, saying Vulcan was the one who was scared, probably because he got messed up last time. Vulcan wasn't having it, shouting that he was the one who got messed up, not the other way around. He even brought up the first ever Spirit Master, saying he would never back down like that. But the protagonist wasn't backing down either, calling Vulcan out for running away looking like a total mess. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted as Hendrik appeared, his presence demanding attention. With a slow, deliberate motion, he closed his eye, signaling a change in the scene. A flashback revealed Hendrik on the 10th floor, where a mysterious event had taken place. A glowing red light illuminated the area as a voice echoed, promising that the one who could make his wish come true would appear. Back in the present, Hendrik took a step forward, his intentions unclear. The protagonist and his crew stood their ground, with the protagonist finally asking the question on everyone's mind, "Hendrik, right?" Hendrik confirmed it, adding that he had been wondering when they would talk. Vulcan looked mad, but Hendrik noticed a familiar face in the crowd. Hendrik paused, then stated that the protagonist had passed some sort of test. The protagonist wasn't thrilled about being judged, but decided to let it go since he had apparently passed. Hendrik mentioned there were too many eyes around and told them to follow him. They walked away from the crowd, leaving the noise behind. The protagonist looked around, curious about where they were headed. They ended up in a dead-end alley, and the protagonist couldn't help but question why they had come so far for this. Hendrik reached his arm through a mysterious portal that had appeared in the alley. Without hesitation, he stepped through the portal, disappearing from sight. The protagonist and Vulcan exchanged a glance before deciding to follow Hendrik through the portal, ready to face whatever awaited them on the other side. With a deep breath, they stepped through the portal, leaving the familiar behind and stepping into the unknown. The air shifted around them, thick with anticipation and the weight of what lay ahead. Cha Jin-hyuk's eyes widened as he took in the bizarre landscape around them. This place was like nothing he had ever seen before. Hendrik explained that they had entered a subspace, a hidden floor within the tower. Hendrik continued, revealing that in this hidden space, the eyes of gods and demons held no power. Cha Jin-hyuk could feel it too. The oppressive forces that usually weighed on him had weakened, leaving him with an unfamiliar sense of freedom. Hendrik turned to face Cha Jin-hyuk, his expression serious. He had a question to ask, one that would change everything. Hendrik's voice was filled with a chilling determination as he declared his intention to eradicate all the dragons that had killed him in this tower. He asked Cha Jinhyuk if he was prepared to fulfill this goal with him. Cha Jinhyuk listened intently, a small smile playing on his lips. He wasn't intimidated by Hendrik's intense gaze or his grand plan. Cha Jinhyuk couldn't help but point out that for someone like Hendrik, his dream seemed a bit too small, too petty. Hendrik's eyes narrowed, his voice dripping with venom as he demanded to know what Cha Jinhyuk had just said. Petty? His dream was anything but petty. Vulcan couldn't stay silent any longer. He shouted Cha Jinhyuk's name, his voice filled with a mix of fear and desperation. Vulcan warned that Hendrik was a monster on another level. He couldn't understand why Cha Jinhyuk was provoking him like this. Cha Jinhyuk sent a telepathic message to Vulcan, telling him to relax. He had a plan, and everything was going to be all right. Turning back to Hendrik, Cha Jinhyuk admitted that he understood his situation and could see how he had become so obsessed with his goal. But Cha Jinhyuk also knew that the ones who had killed them weren't just the 4 royalties. There were others involved, others who deserved to pay. He didn't care why Hendrik had become so fixated on the dragons. But that goal wasn't enough for him. It wasn't enough to quench his thirst for vengeance. Cha Jinhyuk's voice was filled with a cold determination as he declared his intention to kill them all. Every single one of the bastards who had wronged him, regardless of who they were. He pointed at Hendrik, his eyes blazing with conviction. Hendrik's goal was too small for him to ally with him. He had a much bigger score to settle. Hendrik was not having it. He stared back, clearly annoyed, and asked if he was seriously planning to take on all 4 royal families by himself. Hendrik wasn't convinced. Cha Jinhyuk pressed on, declaring they were both dead yet alive, and the same people who caused his death were the ones he was after. He asked if that wasn't enough reason. Hendrik just started laughing, like he just heard the funniest joke ever. And then he laughed even harder, like he couldn't control himself. What was so funny? Cha Jinhyuk looked at him, wondering if he saw that too. Hendrik finally calmed down and admitted he was right, even apologizing for his reaction. He was certain that Cha Jinhyuk was the prophesied man that Yuri talked about. Cha Jinhyuk wondered if the wingless had already approached Yuri. Hendrik pulled out his sword, looking excited about the whole thing. He said he was going to personally verify and test his resolve to see if it was sincere or just a bluff. Hendrik quoted, "The one who schemes against God's will," saying it was his name. Cha Jinhyuk took off his mask, revealing himself as Cha Jinhyuk, the Death Star. Suddenly, a person appeared out of nowhere, yelling at Hendrik, calling him a damned lizard. The person stepped forward, asking if he was creating a fuss by coming back there and if he hadn't finished what he came there to do. Hendrik's face went blank, muttering that he was around. Cha Jinhyuk asked who that was, if he knew him. Cha Jinhyuk looked at the person, trying to figure out who he was. Hendrik explained that he was the blacksmith who lived there and the one who made his sword. The blacksmith confirmed it, asking why he was back since he had already gotten his sword. The protagonist and Vulcan were left stunned by the blacksmith's revelation, the protagonist muttering about the impossibility of the situation. The protagonist's eyes widened as he realized the blacksmith was an Oni, a revelation that left him in disbelief. The blacksmith mused about the strange combination of a spirit and a mystical creature, wondering aloud about the tanned individual before him. The protagonist, still reeling, questioned how the blacksmith was still alive. The blacksmith, offended, retorted that he was indeed alive and asked if the protagonist had any complaints about that. The protagonist quickly backtracked, trying to clarify that wasn't what he meant. The protagonist pressed on, asking how the blacksmith had survived the disaster. The blacksmith lifted his anvil, his expression darkening. With a sudden outburst, the blacksmith accused the protagonist of being the one who burnt his village. A hand suddenly grabbed the blacksmith, stopping him in his tracks. Hendrik intervened, holding the blacksmith back. The blacksmith shouted, demanding Hendrik to let go, accusing the protagonist of burning his village. Hendrik tried to calm the blacksmith down, revealing that the protagonist shared the same backstory as him. Vulcan stepped in, asking the blacksmith if he knew the Oni named Haryu, which shocked the blacksmith. The group moved to the blacksmith's house, the tension palpable. The blacksmith, still in shock, muttered about Haryu being alive. Hendrik stood there, processing the revelation about Haryu being alive, and couldn't help but find the whole situation wildly coincidental. The blacksmith began his tale, setting the scene of the village's traditional festival, a day that started like any other but would soon turn into chaos. All the Onis had gathered on the 100th floor of the tower, leaving the village vulnerable. The blacksmith's voice grew heavy as he recalled his illness, the reason he had stayed behind in the village instead of joining the others. His voice trembled as he described the village burning, the devastation that unfolded while he was helpless to stop it. The blacksmith's concern shifted to Haryu, desperately asking about her whereabouts and safety. The protagonist reassured him that Haryu was on the 9th floor and they would be meeting her soon. The blacksmith noticed the mask the protagonist was wearing and his eyes widened in recognition. He asked if it belonged to Haryu, and the protagonist confirmed it, explaining that it was a gift from her, a token of her gratitude for saving her. Hendrik couldn't help but ask about Haryu's strength, curious about her abilities. The protagonist confirmed that she was indeed strong, even stronger than them in one-on-one battles. Hendrik then wondered if Haryu was just a temporary member of their party, or if she had joined them permanently. The protagonist made it clear that they would be moving together until the very end, that he had accepted her mask and decided to take revenge together with Haryu. The blacksmith, overwhelmed with emotion, grabbed the protagonist's hand, his eyes filled with gratitude. He bowed deeply, thanking the protagonist for bringing hope back into his life. The blacksmith introduced himself as Geno, the village's blacksmith, and pledged to do everything within his power to support them. He bowed again, asking them to rebuild the village with Haryu. The protagonist, taken aback by the request, stammered a response, agreeing to consider it. Vulcan, observing the interaction, couldn't help but wonder if the protagonist realized the significance of accepting the mask, equating it to accepting Haryu's proposal. Geno, generous in his gratitude, offered all the weapons in his workshop to the protagonist, insisting he take them. The protagonist examined the weapons, impressed by their quality, noting they were on another level compared to what Goldrich had provided. Hendrik chimed in, praising Geno as the best Oni blacksmith. With their new gear secured, Hendrik urged they should get going. The protagonist agreed, bidding farewell to Geno. As they turned to leave, they noticed Geno had fallen asleep, his body finally succumbing to the exhaustion and relief of knowing there was a survivor. The protagonist and Hendrik exchanged a glance, realizing that Geno hadn't rested comfortably since they had known him. They decided to let him sleep, leaving quietly to continue their journey. With Geno finally resting, Cha Jinhyuk and Hendrik stepped out quietly, leaving him to his much-needed sleep. Jinhyuk thought about bringing Haryu there later, knowing she could gain some strength from meeting Geno. He glanced back at Geno, feeling a sense of satisfaction. Haryu would definitely benefit from this meeting. But suddenly, a voice called out to him, breaking his train of thought. Jinhyuk turned around, hearing his name being shouted with urgency. Someone was warning him to be careful. A red beam suddenly shot towards him, and he barely managed to dodge it in time. The beam exploded behind him, creating a massive blast that shook the surroundings. Jinhyuk's expression darkened as he realized he was under attack. He turned to face his assailant, ready to confront them. Hendrik stood nearby, observing the situation with a calm demeanor. He noted Jinhyuk's quick reflexes, seemingly unfazed by the sudden attack. Hendrik reminded Jinhyuk that he had warned him before about testing his abilities. With a smile, Hendrik told Jinhyuk that if he wasn't skilled enough to survive, he shouldn't even think about going against God's will. Jinhyuk smirked, not backing down from the challenge. He told Hendrik not to kid himself, saying he would test Hendrik too, addressing him as Dragon Slayer. A loud rumbling sound echoed through the air, signaling the beginning of an intense confrontation. The two swiftly moved through the buildings, their speed and agility causing destruction in their wake. A loud crash resonated as they collided, the impact shaking the very foundations around them. Despite the intensity of their battle, both Jinhyuk and Hendrik seemed to be enjoying the fight, their expressions filled with excitement and determination. Still riding that battle high, Jinhyuk decided it was time to turn up the heat and charge straight at Hendrik. Hendrik, not missing a beat, sliced through all of Jinhyuk's soul soldiers like they were nothing. Suddenly, swords started popping up out of nowhere, aiming straight for Hendrik. Hendrik scoffed at the swords, deflecting them effortlessly while muttering about these shallow tricks. Jinhyuk, seizing the moment, appeared above Hendrik, ready to strike. With a swift move, Jinhyuk thrust downwards, aiming for the perfect hit. But Hendrik, being the slick guy he is, evaded the attack like it was no big deal. Jinhyuk was left stunned, wondering just how strong Waizen All-Master swordsmanship really was. Hendrik grabbed Jinhyuk's hand, making Jinhyuk even more shocked at how easily he dodged that attack. With a quick move, Hendrik sent Jinhyuk flying straight into a wall, leaving us all wondering what's next for our guy. Hendrik wasn't done yet, though. He stood there, looking all smug, and dropped a bombshell. Jinhyuk was a necromancer. And not just any necromancer, but one with some serious skills, given his title. But Hendrik wasn't here to throw compliments around. He pointed out that Jinhyuk's little trait was about to cause some major issues, like unleashing monsters from the 10th floor, which, let's be real, would be a total disaster. Just as Hendrik was laying down the law, purple chains suddenly snapped around him out of nowhere. Vulcan stepped in, looking as chill as ever, and just said, "Really?" Vulcan wasn't done. He grabbed Hendrik and threw in a curveball, asking about the first spirit master like it was some kind of test. Out of nowhere, this massive purple sword appeared, looking like something straight out of a sci-fi game. Jinhyuk was suddenly holding this enormous purple mana sword, and with a smirk, he named it Gungnir. Hendrik was left standing there, looking completely stunned, like he couldn't believe what was happening. Jinhyuk wasn't done showing off. He bragged about how strong his magic was, reminding everyone that this was the same sword that sliced through a great orc warrior like butter. With a grin, Jinhyuk just said, "CYA," like he was about to drop the mic and walk away. And then, in one smooth move, he brought that massive purple mana sword down on the chained-up Hendrik. Hendrik was sweating bullets, clearly not expecting things to go down like this. The sword was pulsing with power, like it was alive and ready to unleash some serious damage. The blade moved so smoothly, it was almost hypnotic, slicing through the air like it was nothing. Vulcan was watching the whole thing go down, and he started putting the pieces together. "That pattern," he muttered, looking like he'd just seen a ghost. "Don't tell me. That sword is..." Vulcan was watching the whole thing go down, and he started putting the pieces together. "That pattern," he muttered, looking like he'd just seen a ghost. "Don't tell me. That sword is..." As the thought crossed his mind, the chains binding Hendrik shattered with a sudden burst of energy, breaking free as he channeled a spell to dispel the magic holding him back. Vulcan's eyes widened as he recognized the pattern on the sword. He shouted a warning to the main character, urging him to dodge while realizing the true nature of Hendrik's weapon. The main character stood frozen, shock written all over his face as he processed the sudden turn of events. Hendrik wasted no time, unleashing massive slashes with his sword, the air itself seeming to tremble with the force of his attack. The sword cut through the air, leaving a trail of destruction in its path, heading straight towards its target. The slash continued its path, now heading directly towards the main character, who barely had time to react. A huge explosion rocked the battlefield, sending shockwaves in all directions. Vulcan, caught in the blast, was sent flying, his body hitting the ground with a sickening thud. Vulcan groaned in pain as Hendrik stood over him, knocking him out with the hilt of his sword, questioning if he was indeed the strongest soldier of the main character. Hendrik turned his attention towards the main character, declaring that he had nothing else to say as he prepared to deliver the final blow, signaling the end for the main character. Just as it seemed all hope was lost, the main character popped out of nowhere, pointing his crossbow at Hendrik, challenging his claim of being the strongest one left. The main character wasted no time, firing 2 arrows at Hendrik, who swiftly dodged the attack, mocking the main character's bowmanship. The arrows, seemingly missing their mark, suddenly lit up with a magical glow, surprising Hendrik as they changed trajectory. Mana shot out from the arrows, creating a dazzling display of magic that caught Hendrik off guard. Hendrik looked on in disbelief as the main character stood with a mana circle forming around him, ready for the next move. The arrows, now glowing with magical energy, illuminated the battlefield, casting an eerie light on the scene. Mana surged out from the arrows, creating a spectacular display of power that left Hendrik in awe. Hendrik could only stare as the main character stood firm, a mana circle swirling around him, signaling that the battle was far from over. With the mana circle fully formed, the main character stood ready, his determination unwavering as he prepared to face Hendrik once more. With the mana circle fully formed, the main character stood ready, his determination unwavering as he prepared to face Hendrik once more. The moment he strikes, his attack pierces right through Hendrik. Hendrik stood there, his body trembling from the impact of the attack. His eyes began to fade, the light within them dimming as the weight of the blow took its toll. Hendrik collapsed to the ground, his body crumpling under the force of the critical hit. The main character couldn't believe it, he actually landed a critical hit. He knew he had to go all out and finish him off right then and there. He remembered that he could only bring out the side effects when he used the mask with Haryu, but this time he was determined to succeed. With a firm resolve, he put on the mask, feeling its power surge through him. The power within him activated, coursing through his veins and amplifying his strength. With renewed vigor, the main character charged towards Hendrik, ready to deliver the final blow. Hendrik, despite his injuries, growled fiercely, his determination still burning strong. Suddenly, a fire tornado appeared, swirling around them with intense heat and power. The main character realized he had missed his chance. Hendrik wasn't going down easily. Hendrik, engulfed in the fire, laughed maniacally. He acknowledged the main character's strength and admitted that he had lost in the battle of numbers. But Hendrik wasn't done yet. With a smile on his face, he demanded more, craving the thrill of the fight. He unleashed his ultimate move, the Charging Dragon Spark, challenging the main character to fight him more. The main character was shocked, unable to comprehend the sheer power and resilience of his opponent. He couldn't see a way out, his mind racing for a solution as he faced the seemingly unstoppable force before him. Staring down the dragon, he realized his battle foresight wasn't enough. He needed speed, and fast, because if that thing landed a hit, he was toast. Then, like a gamer pulling out a secret weapon, he reached for another mask. Slapping on the fox mask, he muttered, believing in its power like it was the last slice of pizza at a party. And just like that, the fox mask lit up, ready to turn him into the speediest, sneakiest version of himself. Geno slowly opens his eyes, letting out a groggy hum as he tries to shake off the drowsiness. Suddenly, a loud noise jolts him awake. He bolts upright, wondering what in the world is going on. Is it Hendrik, that crazy lizard, causing chaos again? Before he can even process the thought, a fox suddenly jumps out of nowhere, startling him further. Geno watches as the fox dashes out of the house, and he can't help but shout after it, warning it about the danger ahead. Out of nowhere, a massive red beam of power blasts through the scene, adding to the chaos. Meanwhile, the protagonist, Cha Jin-hyuk, stands there with a mask, a sense of determination in his eyes. The mask suddenly lights up, and he exclaims that it's the fox mask, feeling a surge of power. Hendrik appears, riding a massive red dragon, looking as menacing as ever. His sword is pouring with mana, and he charges up a powerful attack, shouting out Charging Dragon Spark. In a flash, Hendrik vanishes, leaving everyone in shock. Cha Jin-hyuk is left confused, barely able to process that Hendrik just disappeared. Suddenly, Hendrik reappears right in front of Cha Jin-hyuk, his power radiating intensely. The protagonist barely has time to react as Hendrik's attack almost hits him in the eye, leaving him in a dire situation. The protagonist barely has time to react as Hendrik's attack almost hits him in the eye, leaving him in a dire situation. Suddenly, a massive blast of mana erupts from the protagonist's position. The dust settles, revealing an empty space where the protagonist once stood. Hendrik's eyes widen in disbelief. Hendrik couldn't believe it. He thought there was no way the protagonist could have dodged his attack, given his current mobility. Hendrik scans the area, his gaze landing on a figure standing behind him, the protagonist, donning a mysterious fox mask. Hendrik's eyes narrow as he takes in the sight of the fox mask. He wondered if it belonged to that mystical fox. The fox mask gleams under the light, its intricate details hinting at a power yet to be revealed. Hendrik, fueled by a mix of curiosity and battle lust, charges at the protagonist, accusing him of playing with masks. The protagonist, now equipped with Wolverine-like claws, readies himself for the incoming attack. With a burst of speed, the protagonist charges at Hendrik, his new claws gleaming menacingly. Their weapons clash, sending sparks flying in all directions. The force of their blows shakes the very ground beneath them. The battle rages on, both combatants trading blow for blow. Neither willing to back down, they push each other to their limits. Hendrik, surprisingly, seems to be enjoying the fight. He notes the protagonist's increased mobility and power, comparing it to their previous encounters. Hendrik wonders if the protagonist's newfound strength is due to the power of the fox mask. The protagonist skillfully parries Hendrik's attack, creating an opening in his defense. Seizing the opportunity, the protagonist lunges at Hendrik, aiming for a decisive blow. Hendrik, however, has a trick up his sleeve. A magic circle forms beneath him, hinting at a powerful counterattack. The protagonist realizes too late that Hendrik had created the opening on purpose, setting him up for a magical ambush. Just as the protagonist realized Hendrik's trap, a massive explosion rocked the battlefield, sending shockwaves through the air. The blast's force sent him sliding backward, struggling to maintain his footing amidst the chaos. In a desperate move, he activated his charm ability, hoping to gain an edge over Hendrik. Hendrik, unfazed, simply watched with a smirk, clearly unimpressed by the attempt. Hendrik gritted his teeth, his eyes narrowing as he prepared to counter the charm spell. With a sudden burst of energy, Hendrik shattered the charm spell, declaring he wasn't swayed by such tricks. Hendrik laughed maniacally, explaining that focusing a little could easily break such spells, but it required stopping for a moment, something he wouldn't do. In a flash, the protagonist appeared right in front of Hendrik, his fist ready to strike. He declared he wouldn't use a weak weapon at such close range, intending to finish the fight with this attack. Calling out to Kyunghoon, He announced he was going to use his skill to enhance his attack. Gathering all his power, he channeled the all-master martial combat Fox's mobility enchant, enhanced physical strength, spirit power, demonic energy, and divine power into his fist. With a surge of power, he prepared to deliver the final blow, declaring this was it for Hendrik. With the final blow charged, he unleashed it straight into Hendrik's gut. Oof, that had to hurt. The force of the punch was so strong it sent shockwaves rippling through the city. Talk about a power move. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the scene. Was that part of the plan? Because it definitely wasn't part of the choreography. Smoke billowed everywhere, turning the battlefield into a foggy mess. Classic dramatic effect, but now no one could see a thing. Vulcan groaned, blinking through the haze. Had he blacked out? And wait, did Ohm actually win? No way, that would ruin his whole day. As the smoke started to clear, Vulcan's eyes widened in disgust. What was that feeling? Probably regret. A shadowy figure emerged from the smoke. Who was that? The suspense was killing him. There stood Cha Jinhyuk, barely holding himself up. Vulcan couldn't believe it. How was he still conscious? Blood trickled from Cha Jinhyuk's eyes and mouth. Okay, maybe barely conscious was an understatement. Vulcan shouted, trying to get his attention. Hey, Cha Jinhyuk, snap out of it. But Cha Jinhyuk was in no state to respond. Cha Jinhyuk was spent. Every ounce of strength was gone, his body refusing to cooperate. He was running on pure adrenaline and bad decisions at this point. And then he saw Hendrik still standing. That last move should have taken him down. What was this guy made of? Hendrik slowly lifted his sword, like he was just warming up. Cha Jinhyuk's frustration hit a whole new level. Holding his stomach, Hendrik smirked. You pass, Cha Jinhyuk, as if that was some kind of compliment. Cha Jinhyuk was having none of it. No, he didn't pass. If someone used their final move, they should go down, monster or not. But Hendrik just stood there, defying all logic. Cha Jinhyuk was not having it. Hendrik just stood there, defying all logic, and it was seriously getting on his nerves. Hendrik smirked, finding it ridiculous that someone like Cha Jinhyuk would even think about failing him. Cha Jinhyuk glared, but Hendrik just shrugged it off with a simple fine. Hendrik lifted his sword, declaring he would decide after using his final attack. Hendrik smiled, admitting he had taken a liking to Cha Jinhyuk, and thus needed to pass him no matter what. Cha Jinhyuk started sweating, panic setting in as he realized he couldn't move his body. Suddenly, a big red dragon appeared out of nowhere, adding to the chaos. The flower dragon charged at Cha Jinhyuk with its mouth wide open, ready to strike. Hendrik casually mentioned the name of the beast, as if it was just another day at the office. Cha Jinhyuk was too tired to move, but he managed to mutter that Hendrik passed. As the lights consumed him, Cha Jinhyuk couldn't help but yell out, calling Hendrik a bastard. As the light faded, Cha Jinhyuk found himself in a heated argument with Valkan. Valkan taunted him, claiming he had lost too, and was in no position to call anyone a loser. Cha Jinhyuk, still reeling from his encounter with Hendrik, tried to shut Valkan down, but the fox-like creature wasn't having it. Valkan's ears perked up as he challenged Cha Jinhyuk, asking if he was really going to test him like he had Hendrik. The tension between them was palpable, and it seemed like things were about to get ugly. Cha Jinhyuk had heard enough. He snapped, telling Valkan to shut up and just become a spirit orb already. The raw emotion in his voice was evident, and it was clear he was at his breaking point. Suddenly, a sharp pain stopped Cha Jinhyuk in his tracks. He clutched his side, wincing in agony. It seemed like the aftermath of his battle was catching up to him. Valkan watched as Cha Jinhyuk struggled, muttering that it served him right. It was a harsh comment, but there was a hint of concern in his eyes despite his tough exterior. Valkan continued, reminding Cha Jinhyuk that he had warned him not to go overboard. It was a stark reminder of the consequences of his actions, and Cha Jinhyuk couldn't help but feel a pang of regret. Valkan wasn't done yet. He pointed out that Cha Jinhyuk was only alive because he had met Yuri and attained divine power. Without it, he would still be in his weak body, probably dead by now. It was a harsh truth, but one that Cha Jinhyuk couldn't deny. Cha Jinhyuk had heard enough. He snapped back at Valkan, telling him that he was really starting to piss him off. But Valkan just laughed it off, saying he didn't listen to the screams of a loser. The tension between them was at an all-time high. Just as things were about to escalate, the door opened, and Hendrik walked in. He calmly suggested that they go inside, diffusing the situation for the moment. Hendrik walked in, asking if everyone was okay. His presence seemed to calm the room, and the tension eased slightly. Cha Jinhyuk was surprised to see Hendrik, and Valkan seemed taken aback as well. It was clear that his arrival had changed the dynamic in the room. Valkan recalled what Hendrik had said earlier, and it seemed to have an impact on him. He was quiet for a moment, reflecting on the words. Valken finally spoke up, apologizing for his earlier behavior. It was a surprising turn of events, and it seemed like he was genuinely remorseful. Hendrik brushed it off, saying it was fine and that they should let bygones be bygones. He was calm and collected, trying to keep the peace. Valken seemed relieved at Hendrik's response, saying that was great. The atmosphere in the room had shifted, and it seemed like they were all ready to move forward. Valken commented on how Hendrik had seemed like a lunatic when fighting against Cha Jinhyuk, but was completely different in normal settings. It was an interesting observation, and one that made everyone chuckle. Valken turned to Cha Jinhyuk, apologizing again for his earlier behavior. Hendrik also admitted that he might have gone a little overboard. It was a moment of reflection and apology, and it seemed like they were all ready to move forward together. But just as the mood was lightening up, Cha Jinhyuk suddenly switched gears. He was fuming, and with a fiery look in his eyes, he challenged them both to a fight, declaring he would win next time. Hendrik watched him, a thoughtful look on his face. He knew that determination all too well. He will, one day. Cha Jinhyuk took a deep breath, centering himself. He had called them there for a reason. He wanted to hear their story. He wanted to know about their previous life, the one they had lived before climbing the tower. Hendrik's face darkened as he remembered. He knew what Cha Jinhyuk was asking about. His family, his hometown, all gone because of the dragons. He remembered the dragons burning everything, his family disappearing without a trace. The flames, the screams, the devastation. It was all too real, too painful. But there was a reason he had survived. A reason that had kept him going all these years. Young Hendrik, tears in his eyes, watching as the dragons flew away, leaving nothing but destruction behind. The dragons flew away, leaving behind a trail of smoke and despair. That moment had fueled his rage, a rage that had kept him alive and driven him forward. After that, he had climbed the tower like the other climbers, driven by his talent and his thirst for revenge. Cha Jinhyuk listened, seeing a similarity between Hendrik and someone else he knew. Hendrik continued, his voice steady and cold. He had killed his first dragon on the 100th floor and started plotting his revenge against the 4 royalties. Hendrik affirmed that his plan was going well until the pursuit team under the 4 royalties started chasing him, making his life a living nightmare. Cha Jinhyuk couldn't even imagine the horror of that. As Hendrik casually mentioned, it was his daily routine. Hendrik explained that the stronger he got, the lighter the penalty became. He confidently stated that their branch on the 100th floor was gone. Penalty, Cha Jinhyuk thought, intrigued by the concept. Cha Jinhyuk recalled that the penalty was a compensation system created so that high-level climbers couldn't monopolize the tower. All climbers would receive a restriction upon their abilities on the lower floors instead of the higher floors they had reached. That was the reason why he was able to counter Gold Rich's attack. Without the penalty, he would have died from one attack. Cha Jinhyuk wondered which floor Hendrik had reached. His curiosity piqued. The 900th floor was revealed, a floor where Hendrik's plan had come to an end. Hendrik explained that, on that floor, his plan had crumbled. Cha Jinhyuk thought about the 900th floor, realizing that Hendrik could have become a transcendent. Hendrik revealed that a stronger pursuit team under the 4 royalties was dispatched to catch him. He wasn't able to withstand the dozens of members under the 4 royalties and became like this. It was ironic, Hendrik mused, that among the many species, he had reincarnated into the body of a dragon. Cha Jinhyuk thought about how complicated the situation was. Hendrik admitted that he wanted to die, but it wasn't easy to die in such a strong body. So, he accepted it instead, deciding to use his new body as a tool for his revenge. Cha Jinhyuk agreed that it sounded like Hendrik, asking when they should start climbing. Hendrik remembered that they were going to wait for Haryu, leaving Cha Jinhyuk surprised that Hendrik was going to climb the tower with them. Hendrik's words hit like a gut punch, and Cha Jinhyuk was not having it. Where would he go after leaving them? Nowhere, apparently. The sheer arrogance made Jinhyuk's eye twitch. Hendrik wasn't done dropping truth bombs. They were alike, he claimed. Both had faced their last moments alone. The air grew heavy, like the weight of those memories hung between them. Jinhyuk's gaze dropped, the past flashing before his eyes. Hendrik's words struck a chord. He too had been alone in the end. The realization stung, but there was no denying it. Hendrik continued, laying it all out. They had failed in their past lives, so now they had to learn. Going solo against the tower? That was just asking for a repeat of history. Pride wouldn't cut it this time. Jinhyuk nodded, getting it. They needed allies, a crew, a guild even. Hendrik, seeing he was on the same page, made an offer that could change everything. Why not create a guild? Hendrik's suggestion hung in the air, bold and game-changing. It was time to rewrite their fates, together. A guild? Jin-hyuk blinked, the idea sinking in. It was unexpected, but maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what they needed. Meanwhile, at the Holy Kingdom's guild house on the 600th floor, the vibe was tense. Something big was about to go down. A woman stormed through, annoyance written all over her. Whatever was happening, it wasn't sitting well with her. Carmen burst in, all fire and fury. What the hell was going on? And where was Kane? The room buzzed with her energy, demanding answers. All eyes turned to the screen, where the real drama was unfolding. Whatever was about to drop, it was going to be huge. Kane dropped the bomb. The white swallow branch on the 10th floor? Wrecked. By one guy. Alone. Carmen's jaw hit the floor. Alone? No way. Kane wasn't done. According to Beck, this wasn't the work of some big organization. It was a lone wolf job, and that was even crazier. Carmen was losing it.
Impossible.
Even for powerhouses like them, conquering a guild on the 10th floor with that penalty? Unheard of. Kane snapped his fingers, driving the point home. Even for 9 stars like them, it was a no-go. The room was left in stunned silence, the weight of the news sinking in. The room was still reeling from Kane's last statement. He turned to the window, his gaze distant. The person behind it all had already gained overwhelming power, just like they had when they first stepped into the tower. Kane turned back to the group, a thoughtful expression on his face. Well, it was still within the realm of possibility. Carmen stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. What if someone like that really existed? What should they do then? Kane's eyes narrowed, a determined glint in them. Of course, they should do something about it. A wicked smile spread across Kane's face. They would use the same method as 10 years ago and take them all out. Kane's gaze shifted to the moon outside. They were going to use a bounty hunter for this job. Someone good, Kane added, as if reading their minds. Someone who could get the job done without any mess. A massive cobra with a gaping hole appeared on the screen, a chilling reminder of the bounty hunter's previous task. Another task finished today, the message read. The screen shifted to a woman with a glaring stare, her eyes piercing through the camera. The bounty hunter had been chosen. The bounty hunter's glare still lingered in the air as Cha Jin-hyuk's gaze dropped. A guild, huh? This was getting interesting. Looking up, he agreed with whatever was on her mind. The tension was palpable. But there was a problem. Hendrik wondered what it could be. Cha Jin-hyuk was in the middle of Bale's quest. He needed everyone in the tower to know his name before reaching the 100th floor. It would be troublesome if his name stained her or her guild. The stakes were high. Hendrik saw the situation clearly. Bale's quest was no joke. Then the answer was simple. Hendrik had a plan. Hendrik declared Cha Jin-hyuk as the new guildmaster. The words hung in the air. Cha Jin-hyuk was stunned. This was unexpected. Hendrik never wanted to be the guildmaster anyway. He lacked the confidence for such a position. But if it was Cha Jin-hyuk, a skilled necromancer, he would be an excellent person to lead the army. Cha Jin-hyuk was angry. He was still weaker than Hendrik. Becoming the guildmaster meant there would be times he needed to give him orders. Was it really okay for someone like Hendrik to follow someone weaker than him? The question weighed heavily. Suddenly, Hendrik dropped to his knees. The gesture was dramatic. Hendrik bowed deeply. The tension in the room was thick. Cha Jin-hyuk was taken aback. This was a lot to process. Hendrik asked if this answered his question. The room was silent. The silence lingered, and Hendrik's mind drifted back to a past he couldn't shake. Cha Jin-hyuk didn't understand the depth of his humiliation, the weight of what he had endured. His rage had been all-consuming, his eyes dripping with blood, a visual testament to the fury that had once burned within him. In his memories, a massive hand crushed him, a symbol of his powerlessness, his defeat etched into his very being. Cha Jin-hyuk listened, trying to grasp the magnitude of Hendrik's past. For Hendrik, this was nothing compared to the revenge he sought. Cha Jin-hyuk couldn't help but wonder if his own goals paled in comparison. A smile crept onto Cha Jin-hyuk's face as he made his decision. Fine, he would take on this challenge not just for himself but for both of them. With determination, Cha Jin-hyuk declared he would become the guildmaster, a title that would set them on the path to revenge. Hendrik nodded in approval, acknowledging that Cha Jin-hyuk had made the right decision, a choice that would bind their fates together. Vulcan chimed in, asking what they should call their guild, a question that hung in the air, waiting for an answer that would define their new beginning. Cha Jin-hyuk recalled Uriel's words, a phrase that resonated with their defiance and determination. The one who wears the mask condenses grotesqueness and defies the heavens. With a sense of purpose, Cha Jin-hyuk declared their guild's name Heaven's Defiance. What other phrase could be more befitting for their cause? As the sunrise painted the sky, Vulcan mentioned the fee required to create a guild. Cha Jin-hyuk's mind raced with possibilities. wondering if there was a way to bypass this requirement. Hal greeted Cha Jin-hyuk with a warm welcome, addressing him as Sir Ghostface, a title that seemed to carry a mix of respect and familiarity. Cha Jin-hyuk realized something was amiss. Puppet wasn't there, a fact that didn't go unnoticed, raising questions in his mind. Hal introduced himself as the branch manager of the 10th floor, a revelation that seemed to carry weight and importance, hinting at the challenges and adventures that lay ahead. Cha Jin-hyuk couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation, but that signaled the beginning of a journey filled with uncertainty and excitement. As the anticipation settled, Cha Jin-hyuk's eyes widened in surprise. Ken stood before him, an unexpected figure in this moment of new beginnings. Ken explained his sudden appearance, mentioning the tower's maintenance and his great timing. Hal chimed in, proudly declaring his friendship with Ken. Hal paused for a moment, his curiosity getting the better of him as he asked Ken what brought him to this place at this time. Cha Jin-hyuk, with a determined look, announced his intention to make a guild, setting the stage for his ambitious plans. Hal's face lit up with excitement, exclaiming that everyone would want to join a guild made by Cha Jin-hyuk. But Hal quickly realized the challenge ahead, pointing out that to establish a guild, they needed more than 2 members. Cha Jin-hyuk pondered for a moment before confidently stating that with Hendrik, Vulcan, and the cute fox, they had enough members. Ken and Hal were shocked, recognizing Hendrik as the dragon from Central Street and wondering if Cha Jin-hyuk had won him over. Cha Jin-hyuk casually mentioned that his guild member was quite the celebrity, leaving Hendrik confused about what a celebrity even was. Cha Jin-hyuk revealed that this wasn't all. He had also sent invitations to others, hinting at a growing guild. He explained that once they had all gathered, he wanted Hal to take action so they could become guild members right away. Hal understood and agreed, mentioning that Sir Goldrich had told him to do as much as he could for Cha Jin-hyuk's requests. Invitations were sent out, one reaching Haryu in the midst of a fierce battle with an orc boss. Another invitation found its way to Goldlich, who mused that Cha Jin-hyuk was up to something interesting with this guild. Goldlich's curiosity was piqued, and he couldn't help but wonder what Cha Jin-hyuk was planning with this guild. Meanwhile, Cha Jin-hyuk was already flexing his magical muscles, literally, as he charged his finger with mana. He wasn't just stopping at one finger, though. He went all out, using all 10 fingers to fire soul bullets. But Cha Jin-hyuk wasn't done yet. With a smirk, he summoned a magic circle, hinting at something even more powerful. And there it was, the grand finale, Fission Magic. Cha Jin-hyuk unleashed his ultimate move, leaving everyone in awe. The aftermath? A bunch of orcs looking like Swiss cheese. Not a pretty sight, but definitely an effective one. Hendrik, curious as ever, asked if Cha Jin-hyuk also got a quest from the nine-tailed fox. Cha Jin-hyuk confirmed, mentioning he thought he could complete it by the end of the day. Cha Jin-hyuk then turned his attention to the fox, asking if it was eating well, because, even magical creatures need to watch their diet. Cha Jin-hyuk thought he had completed the quest, but something told him it wasn't quite over yet. As the numbers changed before his eyes, he realized something big was about to happen. Suddenly, a huge pink light shot down from the sky, illuminating everything in its path. Hendrik and Cha Jin-hyuk exchanged glances, wondering what would happen next. Hendrik was particularly curious about what would happen after the fox ate all the livers. Cha Jin-hyuk admitted he wasn't told what would happen. As the pink magic swirled and concentrated, the tension built up. What was going to happen? Cha Jin-hyuk looked on, waiting for the transformation to complete. The system announced that the nine-tailed fox would return to her original form. Vulcan pointed out something in the distance, calling out to Cha Jin-hyuk. There was something over there that needed his attention. The transformation was underway, and it was a sight to behold. The magic swirled and the fox began to change. Cha Jin-hyuk was shocked. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The transformation was complete, and it was more incredible than he could have imagined. Jin-hyuk was still processing the insane transformation, but then his eyes widened as he saw Miho's original form. He couldn't believe it. This was Miho's true self. In a flash, Miho transformed back into her human form, leaving Jin-hyuk stunned. Before he could process what just happened, Valkan and Hendrik rushed over, concern etched on their faces. They asked if he was okay, and Jin-hyuk assured them he was fine. Miho, now in her human form, looked at Jin-hyuk with a mix of confusion and curiosity. She called out to him, her voice hesitant and questioning. She took a step closer, her eyes locked onto Jin-hyuk as she called him daddy, her voice filled with uncertainty. Everyone was taken aback by Miho's words. Jin-hyuk echoed her, his voice filled with surprise and confusion. Just as the tension was building, a figure stepped forward, their presence adding to the confusion. Haryu shot a death glare at the protagonist, her voice filled with a mix of anger and disbelief as she called out to them. Jin-hyuk looked at her, his confusion growing as he questioned why she was appearing from there. As Jin-hyuk stood there confused, Miho pointed dramatically, her voice ringing out with a question that seemed to shake the very air. The word hit Haryu like a ton of bricks, her expression shifting as Miho dropped the bombshell. Jin-hyuk couldn't take it anymore, shouting at the nine-tailed fox, demanding to know what was going on. Suddenly, a quest completion notification popped up, announcing that Miho had become his pet. Talk about a plot twist. Jin-hyuk was shocked, muttering about how this wasn't the kind of reward he was expecting for favorability. Before he could sort out his thoughts, the nine-tailed fox started to leave, Jin-hyuk desperately calling out for her to wait. The others stood there, just as confused, with Valken offering a hesitant congratulations and Hendrik making a snarky comment about humans giving birth to foxes. Jin-hyuk was having none of it, demanding to know if they were teasing him. Haryu suddenly fell to her knees, the weight of the revelation hitting her hard. Her thoughts raced, trying to make sense of it all. She thought about the timeline, about how strong and cool he was, and how it wouldn't be strange for him to have a lover. But the reality was too much. She tried to convince herself to just accept it and move on, but the thoughts kept spiraling. Hendrik stepped forward, addressing Haryu as a female Oni, adding another layer to the already complicated situation. Hendrik stepped up with a friendly introduction, but calling Haryu a female Oni had already made things awkward. He casually mentioned joining Cha Jin-hyuk's party, like it was no big deal. Haryu looked up, but before she could respond, Hendrik added that he'd be in their care. Her eyes suddenly caught sight of something fiery. Memories of her village burning flashed before her eyes. People were getting attacked, the scene was chaotic. A kid was crying, the devastation was clear. A shadowy figure appeared in the memory. The figure looked suspiciously like Hendrik. Haryu gritted her teeth, recognizing him as the village's enemy. She lunged at Hendrik with a fierce attack, screaming for him to die. Hendrik quickly blocked her attack, showing his skill. Hendrik called out to Cha Jin-hyuk to explain the situation, saying Haryu was misunderstanding something. Cha Jin-hyuk smirked, finding it amusing that Haryu saw Hendrik and got angry. He told Hendrik he was on his own. Hendrik warned that Haryu might get hurt a lot. Cha Jin-hyuk reassured him not to worry, saying she could overcome it. Hendrik, ready to act, said then. He deflected her attack and sent Haryu flying back, declaring it as the entrance test to go against God. Haryu was sent flying back, the impact was intense. As she crashed, the forest around her seemed to scream in pain, a massive slash tearing through the trees. The air filled with smoke, obscuring the battlefield and adding a dramatic flair to the intense showdown. Through the haze, Haryu charged forward, her determination burning brighter than ever. Blades clashed with a resounding echo, Hendrik acknowledging her spirit but clearly unimpressed. With a swift motion, Hendrik's slash revealed dragon scales, proving his dominance as he taunted her lack of power. Haryu found herself pushed back, the sheer force of Hendrik's attack overwhelming her. She was sent flying once more, crashing onto the ground with a painful thud. Lying on the ground, Haryu couldn't believe the gap in their strengths. It was way more than she anticipated. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized her enemy was right in front of her, but she lacked the power to exact her revenge. Suddenly, the spirit sword chimed in, calling Hendrik a bastard and a dragon, offering Haryu its power just this once. The spirit sword declared it would give her the power to kill the dragon, revealing its true nature as the Dragon Slayer sword. With newfound power coursing through her, Haryu transformed, ready to take on Hendrik once more. Hendrik, intrigued by the sword's ego, welcomed the challenge, urging her to come at him with everything she had. With a swift motion, Haryu unleashed a fierce slash, her blade cutting through the air with precision and fury. Hendrik, barely breaking a sweat, casually blocked her attack with one hand, his expression unchanging. Haryu stood stunned, her confidence shaken. The power of her Dragon Slayer sword had been effortlessly countered. Before she could react, Hendrik's foot connected with her side, sending her staggering back. A cough escaped her lips as she struggled to maintain her balance. Her knees hit the ground, her strength waning as she grappled with the reality of her situation. Hendrik stood over her, his voice steady and firm. His sword was no ordinary weapon, its very composition surpassing hers in strength. Haryu looked down, her thoughts racing. The Dragon Slayer sword, her trusted companion, seemed to mock her in this moment of defeat. Desperation crept into her voice as she pleaded with her spirit sword, seeking the strength to achieve her revenge. The spirit within the sword responded, its power surging forth in a brilliant display. The blade glowed smoothly, a radiant energy emanating from its core. Haryu's aura shifted, a powerful energy enveloping her as she tapped into the sword's true potential. Hendrik's eyes widened as he recognized the phenomenon. Sword Silk, a rare and formidable power, was now at her command. With a newfound determination, Haryu declared her intent. This was revenge for her village, a debt she would repay to the dead Oni. She swung her sword, a pink silk-like slash cutting through the air with renewed vigor. Hendrik observed the surge in her power, realizing it was beyond her natural abilities. The sword was forcing its strength upon her. He knew that if this continued, the sword's owner would be in grave danger. Realizing the danger the sword's owner was in, Hendrik lunged forward and grabbed her arm, desperately trying to stop her. He yelled for her to let go of the sword, his voice filled with urgency. Hendrik warned her that the power of the sword was like a parasite, consuming its wielder. She wasn't ready to handle such a force, and he feared for her safety. Hendrik's pleas grew more intense as he begged her to release the sword, his concern for her well-being evident in his voice. Suddenly, she recalled the burning village, the flames and destruction flashing through her mind. The memory fueled her determination. Her eyes lit up with a fierce resolve, a stark contrast to the desperation in Hendrik's voice. Haryu yelled back, her voice filled with defiance. She would let go of the sword only when Hendrik was no more, her words echoing her unwavering resolve. With a wild swing, she slashed in every direction, her movements fueled by the memory of her burnt village. She vowed not to forgive Jino, her anger and pain driving her actions. Her rage-fueled swings finally paused as she noticed Hendrik standing at a distance, watching her with a calm intensity. The fire in her eyes flickered with confusion, her chest heaving from the exertion of her relentless assault. Hendrik's gaze was steady, his thoughts racing. He wondered if her hatred for dragons ran as deep as his own, if the pain she carried was as heavy as the burden he bore. With a sudden surge of power, Hendrik stepped forward, his resolve hardening. As someone who had wielded the sword far longer than she had, he felt a responsibility, a need to guide her away from the path of destruction she seemed set on. A massive dragon emerged from the shadows, its mana radiating powerfully. Hendrik's voice echoed with determination as he declared his intent to stop her from walking the wrong path, to save her from the darkness that threatened to consume her. Hendrik's expression softened slightly, a hint of regret flashing across his face. This would hurt, he admitted, but he was sure she would survive the pain. It was a necessary lesson, a trial she had to endure. Haryu stood stunned, her breath catching in her throat. The world around her seemed to blur, the weight of Hendrik's words and the sight of the dragon before her leaving her momentarily speechless. As Haryu stood there, frozen in shock, Hendrik wasn't done yet. He unleashed a wave of power so intense, it felt like the world itself might shatter. The explosion that followed was massive, sending debris flying and the ground trembling beneath her feet. Haryu barely had time to react. In the chaos, her grip on her sword loosened, the weapon slipping from her fingers as the force of the blast overwhelmed her. The world went dark as Haryu's consciousness faded. The last thing she saw was the swirling chaos around her. Haryu found herself walking through a serene forest, bathed in a soft, luminescent light. The tranquility was a stark contrast to the chaos she had just experienced. She took a moment to gather her thoughts, realizing this was the Oni village's forest. Her eyes fell upon a small, seemingly out-of-place ball lying on the forest floor. Curiosity piqued. Haryu picked it up, turning it over in her hands. A ball? What was it doing here? Suddenly, a voice called out to her, pulling her from her thoughts. Sister Haryu. The familiarity of the voice made her look up. A group of children came running towards her, their faces filled with hope and excitement. Please hold onto the ball for us, they pleaded. Haryu's heart swelled as she recognized them, the village children. With a gentle smile, she handed them the ball. Here, she said softly. The children's faces lit up with joy as they exclaimed in unison, "Wow! Thank you, sister." One of the children looked up at her with a serious expression. Sister, they began, their tone shifting. Haryu knelt down, meeting their gaze. Yes, she replied, sensing the weight in their words. The children's forms began to shift, their bodies transforming into something else entirely. Their voices echoed with a haunting question. Why were you the only one who survived? Haryu stumbled back, her mind reeling. What? She couldn't comprehend what was happening before her eyes. Before she could react, a fiery hand reached out, grabbing her with an iron grip. The heat was intense, searing through her clothes and scorching her skin. The figure before her was engulfed in flames, their voice a desperate cry. Sister, save me. The plea cut through her like a knife, leaving her stunned and helpless in the face of the unfolding nightmare. The burning figure before her was a sight of pure horror, flames devouring their body as they reached out in agony. Haryu could only watch, her breath hitching as tears streamed down her face, her heart shattering with each crackle of the flames. The village was a nightmare of fire and screams, the burning bodies of her people scattered like fallen leaves. Why Haryu? Why was she the only one left standing? Haryu's tears turned to rage, her voice breaking as she screamed into the void. Why was she the only one who survived? A voice echoed in her mind, cold and sharp. Because you needed to. You needed to live on, it whispered, because you can wield the Dragon Slayer sword. Even if all the Oni died, the voice continued, the only way to seek revenge is through you. Haryu's body moved on its own, standing up as the voice commanded. The Oni do not forget kindness and vengeance. The voice reminded her as she rose. Hendrik's eyes widened in shock as he saw Haryu standing. Her body battered but her spirit unbroken. She could stand after getting hit by the charging dragon spark? With a sudden burst of speed, Haryu bolted towards Hendrik, her eyes blazing with determination. Her sword found its mark, piercing Hendrik's defenses. But her victory was short-lived as her sword shattered into 1,000 pieces. The voice in her head let out a frustrated TSK, questioning if that was all she had. The spirit of the demon sword master let out a sigh, declaring that this was her limit. The spirit continued, urging her to become stronger. Haryu stood resolute, the spirit's words echoing that until she could slice through it, she wouldn't be able to avenge the Oni. Haryu landed on top of Hendrik, the spirit's voice still ringing in her ears about avenging the Oni. Cha Jinhyuk and Vulcan rushed over, shouting out to Haryu and Hendrik, asking if they were both all right. Hendrik assured them he was fine, mentioning that it seemed like she had run out of strength before she could stab him. Hendrik thought for a moment, considering the situation. He decided it would be best to let the child sleep. A little later, at an inn, the group settled down. Haryu looked skinny, and Hendrik noted that she was probably malnourished, having repeatedly pushed beyond her limits. Using that sword had likely affected her a lot. Everyone looked at Haryu, and Hendrik wondered if she would attack him again when she woke up. Cha Jinhyuk chimed in, saying it was most likely since her story was similar to Hendrik's. Cha Jinhyuk pointed out that Hendrik was probably one of the dragons that attacked her village. Hendrik accepted that he would have to endure that resentment, acknowledging that the sins committed by the weapon belonged to the owner as well. Cha Jinhyuk got up, ready to move. Cha told Hendrik to follow him as they walked out. Following him out, Jinhyuk casually mentions he rented the entire second floor until Haryu wakes up. Hendrik, not one to accept favors lightly, brushes it off, but Jinhyuk insists, hinting at the weight of past sins tied to his weapon. Hendrik questions if Jinhyuk even cares about him, but Jinhyuk fires back that Haryu can only rest comfortably if Hendrik isn't in her sight. Ouch, the burn. A quiet moment as the wind blows through the window, carrying the weight of unspoken thoughts. Haryu stirs, her movements slow but steady as she begins to wake. Her eyes flutter open, confusion clouding her gaze as she mutters about a strange feeling. Her vision clears, and she spots a figure, her voice soft as she whispers, wondering if it's Orabioni. Turns out it's Miho, who greets her with an excited wow. Because, of course, it's always the fox. Haryu jolts upright, surprised to see Orabioni's sister, while Miho cheerfully announces that the sister with the horns is finally awake. Jinhyuk walks in, asking if she's awake, and Haryu's face lights up as she calls out for Orabioni. Haryu complains about her head feeling stuffy, and Miho, ever the cheerful one, announces that Daddy's here. Cue the awkwardness. Haryu's expression darkens, her anger flaring up as she glares at Jinhyuk. But just as quickly as it came, her anger fades, and she collapses, losing consciousness again. Miho tilts her head, confused, as she watches Haryu pass out again, wondering what's going on. Jinhyuk picks up Miho, warning her that she might die if she doesn't change that nickname. Miho, ever the fox, just responds with a playful remark. Jinhyuk sighs, muttering about the nickname sister, as he carries Miho away, leaving the scene with a mix of exhaustion and fondness. Cha Jinhyuk turned to Haryu, asking if she had packed everything, since they wouldn't be returning to the 10th floor. Haryu confirmed that she had everything, even mentioning her Dragon Slayer sword that always felt like a part of her. Hendrik chimed in, assuring that all his possessions were organized by magic. Hendrik advised not to leave anything behind. Miho eagerly agreed, saying she hadn't left anything either. Cha Jinhyuk couldn't help but tease Miho for calling him Appa instead of Daddy, finding it deeply uncool. Haryu quickly defended Miho, saying she had taught her the difference. Haryu explained that even though Miho was a mythical creature, She was still young and couldn't easily tell the difference between daddy and appa. She had made it easy for her to understand and taught her with kindness. Miho chimed in, saying she liked the word daddy more. Haryu glared at Miho, clearly not pleased with her preference. Cha Jinhyuk held out scrolls, telling everyone to take one. He explained that these were teleportation scrolls. If they ripped them, they would teleport to the meeting room that Goldrich had prepared. Haryu looked shocked, clearly surprised by the revelation. Cha Jinhyuk asked if they were ready to head off. Vulcan suddenly shouted, asking what about him. Cha Jinhyuk snapped his fingers, realizing he had almost forgotten about Vulcan. Vulcan began to get sucked into Cha Jinhyuk, shouting about not being treated like an item that could be taken and removed from an inventory. Cha Jinhyuk, holding a scroll, said it was time to go. He ripped the scroll, initiating the teleportation. They arrived at their destination via teleportation. Looking around, Hendrik and Haryu were amazed by the grand place on the 10th floor. Cha Jinhyuk mentioned that this space was built by magic, something only Goldrich's finances could handle. As they marveled at the magic-built grandeur, Haryu's attention shifted to a new arrival, her eyes widening in disbelief. The newcomer, Geno, scanned the room, his gaze lingering on the familiar faces before locking onto Haryu. Recognition dawned on Geno's face as he stumbled back, his voice barely a whisper as he called out her name, disbelief etched into every syllable. Haryu stood frozen, her mind racing. The grandfather she thought was gone stood before her, alive and breathing. In an instant, the distance between them vanished. They crashed into each other's arms, tears flowing freely as they held on tight. The reunion was so heartfelt, it could make even the toughest person shed a tear. Amidst the emotional scene, Vulcan finally made his entrance, his voice cutting through the moment with a mix of relief and exhaustion. Just as the atmosphere began to settle, the Gold Lich, William, swung open the door with a dramatic flair, announcing everyone's tardiness. He strolled in, his voice dripping with sarcasm as he commented on their lack of punctuality. Cha Jinhyuk shot back, reminding William of the chaos caused by the Oni, but William just smirked, calling him soft, a far cry from his old nickname, Death Star. Puppet chimed in, his voice laced with curiosity and a hint of awe as he mentioned the legendary climber who died 10 years ago. Cha Jinhyuk, with a sigh, removed his mask, revealing his face to the stunned group. He confirmed their suspicions, his voice steady as he admitted to being the very same person they thought had perished a decade ago. William, now engrossed in a book, summed up the situation, his voice trailing off as he reached the end of the known information. Silence fell over the room, each person lost in their thoughts, processing the revelations and reunions. Puppet, unable to contain his curiosity, broke the silence with a nervous stutter, his mind racing with questions. With his curiosity finally getting the best of him, Puppet spilled the tea about the 4 royalties secretly taking out potential threats. He revealed that their sneaky attack on the Oni village on the 100th floor was no accident. Puppet wasn't done dropping truth bombs. He pointed out that both Ghostface, or rather, Cha Jinhyuk, and Sir Hendrik had been victims who came back to life, ready for revenge. Cha Jinhyuk confirmed it with a nod. Their guild's goal was crystal clear revenge.
No capítulo.
Heaven's Defiance, as the name suggests, were about to cause some serious chaos in heaven, where their enemies chilled. The vibe was dark, and the mission was lit. Geno, over in his corner, was thinking hard. He already knew Cha Jinhyuk was a bit unhinged, but this plan was next level. Puppet, on the other hand, was hyped. These people were about to shake up the tower in a major way. Gold Lich, aka William, chimed in, asking what the plan was from now on. Cha Jinhyuk kept it simple. Climbing the tower was the move, just like every other guild member. The goal was straightforward. They needed to level up as much as possible. The only way to fight fire was with fire, and they were ready to blaze. Haryu, not wanting to be left out, called out to Geno, asking if he was going to climb the tower too. Geno was happy she wanted him to join, but he had other plans. He was going to move separately. Haryu was shocked, asking why he would do that. Geno explained that seeing her safe had eased his heart, and his past anger and motives were gone. He knew that if they stayed together, they might become satisfied and come to a standstill. Because of some deep Oni sin, the final sword of the Oni couldn't fall. Geno was about to make a big change. He announced he was going to change his name to Shadowless, no longer the Oni called Geno, just an ordinary blacksmith. As he dug into his pocket, everyone wondered what was coming next. The tension was real. Pulling out a scroll, Geno revealed his new identity. The crew was left wondering what this would mean for their future. With Geno's new identity revealed, he didn't waste time reminding Haryu of her duty and the anger she carried as the last remaining Oni. Haryu, taken aback, could only whisper his name, Grandpa. Cha Jin-hyuk stepped forward, addressing Geno, now Elder Shadowless, with a separate mission in mind. He shared his ambitious plan to establish their base on the 100th floor, also aiming to investigate the Oni village. Gold Lich, intrigued, asked if there was someone specific Jin-hyuk had in mind to manage this operation. Jin-hyuk confirmed that the perfect candidate was already there and highly qualified. He was the best Oni blacksmith, and his long residence on the 100th floor made him the most knowledgeable about its geography and traits. Gold Lich, recalling the details, acknowledged the wisdom in Jin-hyuk's choice. With a snap of his fingers, Gold Lich commanded his puppet to take the elder to the 100th floor. The puppet, placing its hand on the elder, vowed to escort him with respect. With everyone's destination set, Jin-hyuk asked if they were ready to get going. The crew stood ready for action as Jin-hyuk addressed them as Heaven's Deviants. With a determined look, he declared it was time to live up to their name. They arrived at the entrance of the 11th floor safety zone. Stepping out of the portal, Jin-hyuk took in the new surroundings. Gazing at the tower, he acknowledged that this was the 11th floor. He declared this was the real beginning. Memories flooded back of those who had wronged him, shaping him into who he was today. He recalled his siblings, their faces etched in his mind. Kane's memory surfaced, a pivotal figure in his journey. Finally, he reflected on himself, the person he had become through all these trials. After reflecting on his journey, he stood with his crew, a determined look in his eyes. Just wait, he thought, a new fire burning within him. A smirk played on his lips as he gazed into the distance. No matter how high up his enemies were, he was ready to take them down, shred by shred. Suddenly, a lone figure walked through, their intentions unknown but their presence undeniable. The bounty hunter, a sly smile on her face, seemed to enjoy the tension in the air. She was on their trail, her smile hinting at a game of cat and mouse that was far from over. The city skyline stretched high under sunny skies, but the real drama was unfolding on the 50th floor. Rumors spread like wildfire as whispers filled the air. Ghostface was the talk of the town, and everyone was buzzing about his latest move. The crowd gathered around the main character, their eyes wide with a mix of awe and disbelief. The news was out, he had reached the 50th floor. Suddenly, the mood shifted. An intruder was spotted, and the crowd turned hostile. They charged, their faces twisted with anger. But the main character wasn't alone. With a commanding voice, he summoned the dead soldiers of the Holy Kingdom, ready to fight back. The undead soldiers sprang into action, cutting through the attackers with eerie precision. Just as it seemed the tide was turning, a new threat emerged. Attackers ambushed from behind, targeting the main character. But it wasn't just the main character who was impressive. His comrades were equally formidable, ready to turn the tables. Haryu and Miho launched their attack, their movements swift and deadly. The battlefield erupted into chaos. Undead soldiers clashed with the attackers, and explosions rocked the air. The branch manager could only watch in disbelief. The branch manager was losing it. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Why was this happening on his watch? With a surge of power, the branch manager pulled out a rune. Despite appearances, he was the branch manager of a guild affiliated with the Holy Kingdom, and he wasn't going down without a fight. With the rune glowing in his hand, the branch manager wasn't messing around. He summoned a rock golem and it was about to get real. Boulders started forming out of thin air, and everyone knew this wasn't going to be a walk in the park. The lady wasn't about to be outdone. She stepped up, commanding the golem like a boss. This was her moment, and she wasn't going to let anyone forget it. Vulcan and Haryu couldn't believe their eyes. A golem? And not just any golem, but a 120th floor monster? Things just got a whole lot more complicated. The lady was loving every second of this. With a smirk, she declared that the tables had turned. The traitors of the Holy Kingdom were about to get what they deserved. She ordered her golem to take care of business, but little did she know, her rock buddy was already in pieces. The golem didn't stand a chance, and she was too caught up in her moment to notice. When she finally turned around, her confidence turned to shock. Her golem was toast, and she was staring down the barrel of a serious problem. Enter Hendrik, the man, the myth, the legend. He stepped in with an intense aura, and everyone knew this was about to get serious. And if that wasn't enough, his strongest comrade was a dragon. No big deal, right? The lady was stunned, her mind racing with the impossibility of it all. Her golem was supposed to be unstoppable, but here she was, staring at the impossible. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. The protagonist wasn't wasting any time. He grabbed her by the neck, lifting her up like she weighed nothing. This was the end of the line for her. He knew exactly who she was, and he wasn't about to let her forget it. The Shakari branch on the 120th floor? Yeah, he knew all about it. She struggled, foam forming at her mouth as she tried to speak. She thought he was planning to make the Holy Kingdom his own, but she couldn't have been more wrong. He wasn't interested in taking over anything. He had already become their enemy 10 years ago, and this was just the final chapter. With a swift motion, her neck snapped, and it was all over. The protagonist wasn't messing around, and neither was the mysterious Ghostface. Every time Ghostface broke his climbing record, the affiliated guild on that floor turned to ashes. Could it be that Ghostface was that strong? The question lingered, but one thing was for sure: this was only the beginning. With the guilds turning to ashes every time Ghostface broke his climbing record, it was clear that this was only the beginning. Cha Jinhyuk, feeling the weight of their mission, decided they were done there for now. As they walked away, Jinhyuk rallied his crew, determined to keep destroying the guilds and their plans. Whispers spread like wildfire as people noticed the infamous Ghostface and his guild, Heaven's Defiance, the ones attacking the 9-star affiliated guilds. Jinhyuk pondered the quest ahead, realizing there was a need for him to reach the 100th floor. Hendrik pointed out that Jinhyuk was giving away information about himself, despite removing all traces of magic up until the 40th floor. Haryu questioned if he was doing it on purpose, and Jinhyuk confirmed her suspicions with a smirk. Jinhyuk was getting tired of raiding their guilds and finding information. He decided to make them come to him instead, checking his status window. With his impressive stats, Jinhyuk felt confident that even if they were ambushed, they would be fine. He acknowledged that although weak, he possessed both demonic energy and divine power, which would become great weapons even if a climber from a high floor attacked them. Feeling a bit greedy, Jinhyuk admitted he was lacking in weapons. Hendrik reminded him not to be so greedy. Jinhyuk recalled the weapon that Shadowless had created, realizing it would be hard to get a better weapon unless they climbed to a higher floor. Haryu asked about Shadowless's well-being, and Miho playfully blamed Hendrik for making her sister sad. Hendrik let out a sigh, and Jinhyuk decided it couldn't be helped. They needed to go to a certain place to make Haryu happy and to get Jinhyuk a weapon. Hendrik curiously asked about that place. Jinhyuk revealed their destination, the Black Market on the 51st floor. The Black Market on the 51st floor was the ultimate shopping destination for the impossible-to-find items, the kind that regular auctions couldn't even dream of offering. Jinhyuk explained that sometimes, if luck was on their side, they might even stumble upon something truly rare. Jinhyuk assured them that if they found something they liked, he would get it for them. The offer was on the table, and the excitement was building. Haryu's eyes lit up with excitement, and Miho, ever the enthusiastic one, chimed in, practically bouncing with joy. The thought of shopping had them both hyped up. Jinhyuk couldn't help but think how happy Miho seemed. He wondered why he hadn't thought of bringing her here sooner. Just as the shopping excitement reached its peak, something unexpected rolled towards them. A voice chimed in, thinking shopping was a great idea. The object opened, revealing a bomb. Jinhyuk's eyes widened in shock as he realized the danger they were in. A massive explosion rocked the area, sending debris flying everywhere. The Black Market was suddenly a war zone. Jinhyuk dodged the explosion, his reflexes kicking in just in time. The blast was intense, but he managed to stay on his feet. As Jinhyuk steadied himself, he noticed a gun behind him. The danger wasn't over yet. Jinhyuk turned to see a bounty hunter taking aim. The situation was escalating quickly. The bounty hunter fired, and Jinhyuk barely had time to react. The shot was powerful, and the energy it released was massive. Jinhyuk dodged the massive energy blast, his body moving almost on instinct. The explosion that followed was enormous, shaking the ground beneath him. Another explosion rocked the area, the force of it pushing Jinhyuk to his limits. He couldn't believe the power packed into that small gun. Jinhyuk realized that without the mask's power, he would have been dead. The bounty hunter had meant business. The bounty hunter acknowledged that Jinhyuk had dodged a point-blank attack. She seemed impressed, but the fight was far from over. Hendrik swung his sword at the bounty hunter, joining the fray. The battle was intensifying, and the stakes were higher than ever. The bounty hunter looked at Hendrik's visor, her expression unreadable. The tension was palpable as the confrontation continued. The bounty hunter's gaze remained locked on Hendrik's visor, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Suddenly, a barrier materialized out of nowhere, blocking Hendrik's slash like some kind of magical force field. Hendrik's eyes widened as he took in the sight of the bounty hunter, fully geared up and ready for battle. He couldn't believe it. She wasn't just some ordinary hunter, but a full-blown machine. Hendrik was still processing the sight of the bounty hunter, all geared up and ready for battle, when suddenly a barrier shot up between them. Before he could react, Hendrik was sent flying backward, the bounty hunter's shock rebound attack hitting him square in the chest. Out of nowhere, Haryu and Miho appeared, surrounding the bounty hunter with intense glares. Haryu's eyes blazed with fury as she yelled, clearly not happy about the gun pointed at her Orabioni. Miho, with her fox-like agility, was ready to pounce, her only thought to protect her brother. They lunged at the bounty hunter, their attacks swift and coordinated. But the bounty hunter was quick, dodging their attacks and flying up into the air, announcing that her flying units were on the way. Haryu, not one to back down, shouted that she could handle this. Suddenly, bombs started dropping from above, exploding all around them. The battlefield was now wide open, the smoke and debris creating a chaotic scene. Just as the dust began to settle, the battlefield erupted into a series of massive explosions, lighting up the chaotic scene with a fierce intensity. Amidst the turmoil, Haryu and Miho made their exit, leaving the field to the remaining warriors. A bounty hunter stepped forward, eyeing the so-called super rookie Ghostface and his party with a mix of disappointment and amusement, clearly unimpressed by their performance. But the protagonist and Hendrik weren't about to back down, both of them echoing the same defiant thought as they prepared to strike. With a swift and devastating slash, they attacked her with all their might, determined to prove her wrong. The bounty hunter, unfazed, calmly pressed a gun to Hendrik's head, acknowledging their effort with a simple, "Not bad." She then turned her attention to the protagonist, pressing the gun to his head as well, her intentions unclear but her confidence unwavering. The protagonist couldn't help but feel a pang of frustration, thinking this was going to be an easy win. In a sudden move, they jumped, catching the bounty hunter off guard. The bounty hunter, however, remained calm, telling them not to be so upset as she had something important to discuss with them. She removed her helmet, revealing herself as Shane, a talented bounty hunter with a reputation to match. The protagonist was taken aback, questioning how a bounty hunter could be among the floor climbers. He couldn't help but wonder who among the mere floor climbers had put a bounty on their heads. Shane smiled, telling them there was no need for introductions as she already knew who they were, the super rookie Ghostface and his comrade, the strange dragon. Her smile widened as she called them her prey, leaving the protagonist and Hendrik on edge, wondering what she had in store for them. Hendrik wasn't having it and drew his sword, asking if those were her last words. Shane laughed and said she had changed her mind. Instead of a fight, she proposed a bet. A bet that would benefit everyone involved. Hendrik was confused and asked what kind of bet she was talking about. Shane explained that if they won, she would tell them who placed bounties on their heads. The protagonist was intrigued by the offer. Hendrik, however, had heard enough and swung his sword, ready to kill. The protagonist stopped him, saying they needed information and should hear her out first. He explained that if she was supported by powerful factions, their climb would become even more dangerous. Hendrik was frustrated but held back. The protagonist walked towards Shane and asked what kind of bet she had in mind. Shane put on her helmet, saying a battle against a strong foe was always fun. She punched her fists together, ready to fight. Hendrik was confused, asking if they were fighting anyway. Shane confirmed but added there were conditions. No matter who won, all three of them must be alive. She didn't plan to kill either of them. Hendrik was taken aback, interpreting it as a request not to kill each other. He wondered what she was scheming. Shane added that since it was 2 against 1, the protagonist shouldn't use his summons. The protagonist agreed, giving his word. He planned to find out what she was scheming after beating her up. Hendrik smiled, asking if she just needed to be breathing, even if he cut off all her limbs. Hendrik's dark humor hung in the air, but before the protagonist could even react, Shane's helmet suddenly transformed, her voice cutting through the tension as she declared it was time to begin. Without warning, a turret emerged behind the protagonist, switching to autopilot as Shane's helmet mode activated. The turret locked onto its target and fired, the sudden attack catching everyone off guard. The protagonist barely flinched, dismissing the turret as a mere toy, his confidence unshaken. Shane appeared behind the protagonist, her voice dripping with sarcasm as she asked if he had forgotten about her. The protagonist quickly threw up a barrier, ready for whatever came next. Hendrik appeared behind Shane, his presence adding another layer of tension to the already chaotic scene. Shane remained eerily calm, her visor activating as she prepared for the next move. In a flash, Shane's body disappeared, leaving everyone stunned and wondering what just happened. Both the protagonist and Hendrik were left stunned, their eyes scanning the area for any sign of Shane. Hendrik, seeing an opening, lunged at the protagonist, his attack swift and precise. But in a surprising twist, Hendrik redirected his attack at the last second, leaving everyone confused about his intentions. A massive explosion rocked the area, the blast sending shockwaves through the battlefield. Amidst the chaos, Shane reappeared in the air, watching the scene unfold. With a smirk, she commented on their terrible teamwork, suggesting it was because they were both too used to handling things on their own. Shane's words hung in the air as the two warriors below locked eyes, tension crackling. Cha Jinhyuk lunged at Hendrik, accusing him of blocking his strike. Hendrik shot back, blaming Cha Jinhyuk for not predicting his move. The argument escalated, their voices rising above the chaos. Cha Jinhyuk's frustration boiled over as he pointed out how Hendrik mirrored his every move. He snapped that this was a direct order from their guildmaster, his voice sharp with authority. Hendrik yelled back, telling Cha Jinhyuk to be rational. He insisted that leaving everything to him was the key to their victory, his voice a mix of desperation and determination. Shane floated above, watching the heated exchange. With a sigh, she called out to the bickering duo, her voice cutting through their argument like a knife. A massive weapon materialized behind her, pulsing with a bright, ominous light. Shane shook her head, acknowledging their strength but calling them out for constantly neglecting her presence. With a smirk, she asked if they had ever heard of a railgun, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Before they could react, the railgun fired, unleashing a devastating beam of energy straight at them. Cha Jinhyuk and Hendrik stood frozen, their argument forgotten as they stared down the incoming blast, realizing they were about to be fried. Just as they braced for impact, a massive beam explosion erupted between them, lighting up the room like the world's most dangerous firework display. The explosion grew bigger, turning their near-death experience into a full-blown, extra-crispy nightmare. Suddenly, a rift tore open in the forest outside, like a glitch in the universe's code. Cha Jinhyuk and Hendrik came tumbling out of the rift, looking like they'd just survived a wild roller coaster ride. They fell into the forest, landing with a thud, surrounded by trees that probably witnessed way less drama than what these two just went through. Cha Jinhyuk let out a frustrated groan, clearly not thrilled about their current situation. He sighed in relief, realizing the forceful teleportation had actually worked. Getting hit by that explosion would have been a one-way ticket to Disaster Town. He had cast that teleportation spell for emergencies, and it turned out to be their golden ticket out of there. But just as he was about to celebrate, Hendrik started yelling like a madman, accusing him of bailing mid-fight and questioning his every life choice. He quickly shushed Hendrik, trying to keep things on the down low. Suddenly, they spotted a drone hovering around, looking all kinds of suspicious. He squinted at the drone, trying to figure out if that was the same helmet from before. This woman was packing some serious skills and weapons. Who even was she? That Shane woman was definitely not from around here. No way she was from Earth. Since the tower was basically a cosmic subway station, she was probably from some other dimension, a climber with tech skills way beyond anything he had ever seen. He turned to Hendrik, ready to lay down some wisdom. If he really wanted to win, he needed to listen up. Meanwhile, Shane was flying around, scanning the area like a hawk. She was sure they were hiding somewhere close. Suddenly, she felt a shadow lurking nearby. Out of nowhere, he appeared right in front of her, like a magic trick gone wrong. Shane pointed her weapon at him, shocked that he would just reveal himself like that. Had he given up already? He just smirked, saying he had a long lifeline and wasn't going down that easily. With a flash, he used Soul Bind, unleashing a power that caught her off guard. The massive bind wrapped around Shane, trapping her in an inescapable hold. Trapped in the bind, Shane couldn't help but feel a mix of disappointment and disbelief. She had expected something grand, but this was just a small spell, barely worth her time. Her pride took a hit. She was done playing around, her expression turning serious as the rift opened before her. Hendrik struck with precision, his blades slashing through the air, ready to face whatever came next. Shane watched intently, her eyes locked onto the scene unfolding before her. With a sudden burst of energy, she unleashed a massive beam, her frustration clear as she shouted out. The aftermath left her head smoking, the intensity of the attack taking its toll. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. This couldn't be just a cliché demonstration. There had to be something more to it. Hendrik smiled, enjoying the challenge. He called out, ready to face Cha Jinhyuk. Shane realized the barrier before her. It was Ghostface's barrier, a formidable obstacle in her path. Hendrik slashed at her with renewed vigor, his attacks precise and relentless. Shane couldn't help but admit, this wasn't bad at all. The challenge was real and she was ready for it. Cha Jinhyuk revealed his plan. Summoning spells weren't the only thing a spirit master had. With his All-Master trait, he was going to give Hendrik all the buff skills he had. With a clap of his hands, he declared he was going to show what a true All-Master support was like. The explosion within the bind was intense, the energy unleashed shaking the very ground they stood on. Hendrik chased Shane with incredible speed, his movements a blur as he closed the distance between them. Shane fired shot after shot, her attacks relentless as she tried to keep Hendrik at bay, shouting for him to get lost. Shane's shots kept flying, but Hendrik was just dodging like he was in a game of dodgeball, and not even trying hard. He called her out, asking if she was really giving up already. Shane quickly put up a barrier, but Hendrik wasn't having it. He slashed at her, yelling that he wouldn't let her get away. Shane was left stunned, probably wondering how he was still coming at her so hard. Suddenly, a massive golden dragon appeared out of nowhere, and Hendrik's eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning. Hendrik wasn't wasting any time. He used some kind of lightning dragon attack and came at Shane with everything. He slashed at her, and it looked like Shane was in serious trouble. Then, out of nowhere, Shane took a single step. Hendrik noticed and his face dropped. Shane pointed out that he had stepped on something he really shouldn't have. Shane was smiling like she had just won the lottery, saying it was her gift to him for pushing her this far. The words nuclear mine popped up, and Cha Jin-hyuk was screaming Hendrik's name like he was in a horror movie. A blue nuclear explosion went off, and it was looking like the ultimate mic drop. The explosion destroyed everything in sight, leaving us all wondering what just happened. Cha Jin-hyuk stared at the aftermath of the explosion, cursing under his breath. Where did these things even come from? Before he could even process his thoughts, a bullet found its way into his body. Shane casually strolled into the scene, declaring checkmate as if it was just another day at the office. With her gun pointed, she taunted that the dragon was out of commission and Ghostface was as good as gone with that injury. Cha Jin-hyuk, barely holding on, muttered something about not knowing what she was capable of. Through the smoke, a mysterious figure emerged, and Cha Jin-hyuk recalled something he forgot to mention. A massive dragon burst out from the smoke, and Cha Jin-hyuk revealed that this beast had a long lifespan. Shane was taken aback, questioning if they were finally getting serious. Hendrik, in all his dragon glory, stood before them, ready for action. With a deafening roar, Hendrik expressed his disgust at being forced into this form. Fuming with rage, Hendrik unleashed a devastating dragon breath, turning the battlefield into a chaotic explosion of raw power. Shane barely managed to dodge the blast, using her boost to get out of the way just in time. Even she had to admit the strongest person in the tower was on another level. But Shane wasn't about to back down. She snapped, her determination flaring up as she readied her next move. A bunch of massive railguns appeared above Hendrik, aimed and ready. Shane wasn't at her full power, but she wasn't going down without a fight. With a command, the railguns fired at maximum output, unleashing a massive explosion that lit up the battlefield. Despite the overwhelming attack, Hendrik was still standing, his dragon form barely phased. Hendrik looked at the railguns, shocked. He couldn't believe Shane had brought those things into the fight. Shane stood stunned for a moment, realizing the gravity of the situation. Hendrik wasn't messing around. Hendrik took to the air, his voice echoing with a mix of frustration and resolve. He reminded Shane of their promise to kill each other, but it seemed like he was having second thoughts. Hendrik's voice boomed as he prepared another dragon breath, warning Shane not to make him break that promise. The dragon breath charged, a terrifying sight that promised destruction. Shane knew she had to act fast. With a defiant shout, Shane declared she could block the attack, her confidence unwavering. Activating her visor, Shane prepared to counter Hendrik's devastating attack with everything she had. A strong shield materialized in front of her, a barrier against the incoming dragon breath. Shane was ready. The dragon breath hit the shield, resulting in a massive explosion that shook the battlefield. The clash of their powers was intense, but Shane held her ground. Despite the explosion, Cha Jin-hyuk was struggling. His divine power was draining faster than he could recover, and that special attack didn't help either. And as if things couldn't get worse, Hendrik transformed, causing all of Cha Jin-hyuk's buffs and defense skills to vanish into thin air. It seemed like Hendrik's new form was messing with the mana in the area, confusing it and making everything more chaotic. Shane, perched on Hendrik's head, couldn't help but admire the raw power of a dragon. They really were something else. Suddenly, another Shane appeared out of nowhere, greeting with a cheerful hi that left everyone confused. And then, more Shanes started popping up everywhere, like a weird glitch in reality. Hendrik was fuming. He should have been the only one controlling the mana in this area, but something was clearly interfering. Shane smirked, surrounded by her holograms. It wasn't magic, it was science, and Hendrik, the master of mana, couldn't do anything about it. With a grin, Shane pointed her guns, ready to show Hendrik what physical substances could do. Bullets rained down on Hendrik's dragon body, proving that sometimes old-school weapons were just what you needed. Hendrik roared, his massive red aura flaring up in response to the attack. The battlefield was intense, and the stakes were higher than ever. Shane wasn't done yet. She pulled out a massive sniper rifle, ready to take the final shot. Hendrik, covered in his red aura, braced himself for what was coming next. Hendrik, still glowing in that fierce red aura, couldn't believe his eyes. Was that really the legendary move? Shane smirked, totally owning it. Yeah, it was the real deal, strongest, dirtiest, and she wasn't even trying to use it if she could help it. Hendrik wasn't backing down. He powered up, his massive dragon breath surging like a tidal wave of pure energy. Fine, if that's how she wanted to play it. He launched himself into the air, ready to bring the heat. Hendrik unleashed his breath attack while Shane fired her shot, both colliding in a showdown of epic proportions. The bullet burst from its shell, heading straight for the clash. The impact, a massive explosion that lit up the entire area like the 4th of July on steroids. Hendrik was buried under the rubble, completely covered. Shane wasn't looking much better, also covered in debris. For a moment, everything went still, like that awkward pause after a bad joke. Then, bam! A bright light swallowed the entire area, blinding everything in sight. The explosion was next level, covering the whole area in a fiery glow. When the dust settled, there was a crater in the earth so big you could probably see it from space. Somehow, Shane was still standing, her barrier barely holding on. That antimatter bomb? Yeah, it was exactly why she never wanted to use it. Her drone started freaking out, power overheating during shield usage. Couldn't keep up, struggling to maintain normal functions. Shane let out a breath, talking to her drone like it was a tired pet. "Okay, good job. Could rest a little now." Shane took a deep breath, then looked up, her face falling. Oh no, not him. Hendrik stood before her, a figure she never expected to see again. Shane was stunned. What? No way, he could still fight after that. The dragon's body crumbled behind him, its once mighty form reduced to rubble. Hendrik began to fall, his body succumbing to the weight of the battle. A loud crash echoed as he hit the ground, smoke rising from the impact. Shane couldn't help but laugh. She had actually defeated a dragon, something she never thought possible. But why was he dropping his guard? It didn't make sense. Cha Jinhyuk walked forward, his voice steady. It was 2 versus 1, had she forgotten? He took off his mask, revealing his face. He was still there, still standing. Shane pointed her gun at him, her voice laced with disbelief. For someone with a hole in his chest, he sure was talking great. Did he think his handsome face under that mask would save him in this situation? The weapons she had right now were enough to kill him. Why didn't he just admit defeat? Cha Jinhyuk picked up a dragon scale, his eyes filled with curiosity. He ate the scale, his voice firm. It wasn't over until it was over. Shane was left stunned. He actually ate the scale. What kind of power move was that? Cha Jinhyuk wasn't done yet. Dragon wings burst from his back as he declared he needed the information she had. A tail and horns followed. He was going full dragon mode, and he didn't care if it was too much. He needed to know. Shane was feeling a mix of fear and awe. This was next-level transformation. The power of dragons was on full display, and Shane could barely process what she was seeing. Cha Jinhyuk was feeling it too. Dragons were the masters of mana for a reason. He felt unstoppable. Magic circles appeared around him. Yeah, he could do this too. Shane was freaking out. This was way more than she bargained for. Shane was freaking out, and Cha Jinhyuk was about to make it worse. He unleashed Gungnir, his legendary weapon. Gungnir rained down on Shane with terrifying power, leaving her barely any time to react. Massive explosions rocked the battlefield as Cha Jinhyuk commanded Gungnir to fire at random. Chaos unleashed. Shane barely managed to evade the explosions using her boost ability. She couldn't believe the power she was up against. It was on the same level as the dragons. Shane's mind raced as she tried to understand what was happening. Was Ghostface also a dragon? No, his energy changed after he ate Hendrik's scale. Shane's eyes widened in realization. Don't tell me he could use the power of the things he ate. Cha Jinhyuk attacked with his newfound dragon power, taunting Shane that she figured things out too late. Shane drew out her beam saber, ready to counter Cha Jinhyuk's attack. Their weapons clashed, the force of the impact sending shockwaves through the battlefield.
Cha Jinhyuk smile, mocking sang.
What's wrong? She was in high spirits just a second ago. Where did the great bounty hunter go? Shane gritted her teeth, refusing to back down. She wasn't about to be defeated by a mere floor climber. With a swift motion, Shane slashed at Cha Jinhyuk, declaring that she would end this the way he wanted it to end. Shane materialized another weapon, calling out to Ghostface. A railgun, beaming with power, appeared in her hands. She was ready to unleash her chimera railgun. The railgun was ready, but so was he. Cha Jinhyuk wasn't about to back down. He powered up, laughing with a mix of excitement and determination. It was time to see who was truly stronger. Shane couldn't believe her eyes. The power radiating from him was insane, and it left her nervous and shocked. And just when she thought it couldn't get any worse, he pulled out another trick. A dragon's breath? Seriously? With a fierce blast, the dragon's breath roared to life, unleashing pure chaos. Shane's railgun didn't stand a chance. It shattered into a million pieces under the sheer force of his attack. The impact sent Shane flying backwards, her body crashing through the air with brutal force. She plummeted to the ground, her fall as dramatic as her defeat. The ground shook as she hit it hard, the impact echoing through the battlefield. But victory came at a cost. Cha Jinhyuk coughed up blood, the strain of his power taking its toll. A mysterious scale emerged from his body, hinting at the dragon power within him. He realized the power was still too much for him to handle completely. He needed more time to master it. Looking around, he knew the battle was far from over. A massive crater hole lay before him, a testament to the destruction he had caused. He couldn't help but curse under his breath, wondering what to do next. Suddenly, Shane's eyes flickered open, a sign that she wasn't done yet. With a groan, she pushed herself up, her body aching all over, but she wasn't about to stay down. As she struggled to her feet, a familiar voice cut through the haze. Hendrik stood there, arms crossed, watching her with a smirk. Of course, he'd be the first to notice she was up. Hendrik wasn't alone. Shane was there too, looking just as amused. They had been waiting for her to wake up, and now that she was, they weren't letting her forget it. Shane pointed at her, laughing. She had expected her to be out longer, but of course, she'd always been quick to bounce back. She looked around, confusion written all over her face. This wasn't where they had been before. Something was off. Her eyes widened as she took in the massive barrier surrounding them. Where were they? This wasn't the place they had been fighting in. The protagonist stepped forward, explaining that he had put up the barrier. After they had all passed out and the area had been destroyed, he couldn't just leave them exposed. Shane laughed, trying to lighten the mood. Maybe they had just partied a little too hard. But the reality was far from funny. She admitted her defeat, acknowledging that she had thought she stood a chance. But with a monster that could steal the power of the four royalties, she had been outmatched from the start. The protagonist and Hendrik exchanged glances. They had really gone all out, but why? What had been the point of their bet in the first place? Shane's eyes sparkled with excitement. There was a reason, and it was a big one. She revealed her true motivation. She wanted to fight a dragon and wasn't about to miss a chance like this. The protagonist and Hendrik were taken aback. They had gone through all of this just because she wanted to fight a dragon? Shane wasn't done. It wasn't just any dragon. It was her or the 50th floor dragon. She wanted to know who was stronger. Hendrik was speechless. The protagonist, on the other hand, was furious. He had used all the mana stones he had gathered from the monsters he had killed to put up that barrier. The protagonist took a deep breath. Now that she was awake, she needed to tell them what they had promised. He asked her the question they had all been waiting for. Who was it? Who had sent a bounty hunter to kill them? Shane's expression turned serious. It wasn't just one person who had sent her after them. She revealed the shocking truth. The place that had put a bounty on them was the Guild Association itself. The protagonist's face darkened. The Guild Association? That was a heavy accusation. Shane nodded, confirming his fears. The Guild Association had put a bounty on them, and now they were in more trouble than they had realized. Cha Jinhyuk's face went pale as the weight of Shane's words hit him. The Guild Association was involved, and he couldn't believe it. His mind raced, trying to connect the dots, but it all seemed too surreal. Hendrik looked confused, scratching his head. He had no idea what a guild association was, and it showed. Shane sighed, explaining that high-ranking climbers had limits on lower floors. They got around this by backing low-ranking guilds, using them as proxies to extend their influence. She continued, saying that those guilds then took over even lower-ranking guilds, creating a chain reaction that stabilized their power. That was the Guild Association. Hendrik muttered that there weren't many powers like that in the tower. If they investigated a little, they could figure out who was behind it. But Cha Jinhyuk shook his head. There was no need to investigate. He already knew. There was only one person who could maintain such a large power and do this. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture wasn't pretty. A figure stood by the window, gazing out at the world below. The view was stunning, but his mind was elsewhere. Cha Jinhyuk's eyes narrowed as he thought of the Holy Kingdom's Guild Association. 9-star Kane Pellin. It was him. With the Holy Kingdom's Guild Association still fresh in his mind, Kane turned his gaze out the window, addressing the gathering with a calm yet firm tone of gratitude. The legendary 9 stars stood before him, their presence filling the room with an aura of power and prestige. Doneth, ever the straightforward one, cut to the chase, revealing he already knew why they had been summoned. The raid on the Holy Kingdom's affiliated guild was the talk of the hour. Merlin and Dang joined in, their voices filled with a mix of disbelief and curiosity. The name Ghostface echoed in the room, a mysterious figure who had managed to attack a high-floor climber. A single step echoed through the room, drawing everyone's attention. Carmen's intense aura filled the space as she questioned if they were done talking, her presence commanding and unyielding. Doneth's hand rested on his sword, a hint of tension in the air, as he asked if Carmen was looking for a fight. Kane intervened, his voice steady as he questioned Doneth's ability to guarantee the safety of his affiliated guild, hinting at a deeper concern. Doneth sweated under the pressure, the weight of Kane's words hitting home. Kane continued, labeling Ghostface as a sprouting weed that needed to be dealt with, his tone leaving no room for doubt. With an evil smile, Kane suggested they pluck the weed, his plan beginning to take shape. Doneth wondered aloud, questioning how they were going to get rid of Ghostface. His curiosity piqued. He continued, asking if they were going to personally go down there and get rid of him, the tension in the room rising. Kane shook his head, explaining that the penalty gap was too big, his mind already several steps ahead. Of course, they would get a freelancer, Kane's plan becoming clearer with each passing moment. He revealed he had already chosen who to send, the pieces of his strategy falling into place. With his strategy locked in, Shane stepped up, ready to face the challenge. Both she and her opponent were climbers who had reached the 300th floor, but the gap in their skills was no joke. Shane couldn't help but acknowledge that those king-ranked climbers were on a whole other level. A hooded figure appeared, his voice dripping with disappointment as he accused her of failing the mission and even giving information to their enemies. Another man, radiating an intense aura, explained that the traces of the ghost face party had grown faint after parting ways. It was dinner time, and the tension was palpable. Suddenly, Camille wrapped around Shane, its presence a mix of comfort and urgency. Camille squeezed Shane tightly, as if trying to convey something without words. In a sudden turn of events, the large snake lunged towards her, its jaws wide open. Meanwhile, in another place, a faint voice echoed, calling out for help. Haryu found herself in a dreamlike world, hearing desperate pleas for salvation. She jolted awake, her heart pounding with the remnants of the dream. The protagonist noticed her stirring and asked if she was awake. Haryu, still disoriented, called out. She then inquired about the woman and Hendrik, realizing that he had left earlier to gather information. Cha Jinhyuk knew that the people after them were not to be messed with, and Hendrik was already on the case, gathering intel from Shane. Time to get moving. He asked if everyone was ready to go, but Haryu was confused about their destination. Cha Jinhyuk was surprised she forgot so quickly. Their next stop was crucial. The black market on the 51st floor of the business district. That was their destination. Miho spotted something delicious and asked if she could have it. Cha Jinhyuk gave the okay since they still had time before the black market opened. Miho was thrilled. Haryu was lost in thought, trying to recall a strange dream she had. Cha Jinhyuk noticed her distraction and asked if she was going to eat anything. She apologized, saying she was just thinking about something. Miho, with a mouthful of food, excitedly asked Haryu to join her. Haryu agreed and they started eating together. As night fell, Cha Jinhyuk knew they had to prepare. Before heading to the black market, he realized Haryu, being an Oni, was too noticeable. With a snap of his fingers, he changed her appearance. Haryu was amazed at her new look, thanking him. He then told Miho to change into her fox form and jump onto his shoulder. With Miho perched on his shoulder, Cha Jinhyuk arrived at the entrance of the black market. The entrance loomed before them, and a voice confirmed their access, urging them to head inside. Cha Jinhyuk handed over a card, his ticket to whatever lay beyond. The man's eyes widened as he recognized the black card, a rare item that granted access to all black market auctions. He couldn't believe it, knowing how hard it was to get one without a good sponsor. Cha Jinhyuk asked if there was an issue, but the man quickly shook his head, trying to compose himself. The man offered to escort them to the VIP seating area, clearly still in shock. As they walked, whispers filled the air. People murmured about the masked man, Ghostface, and the woman with him. They wondered how he had gotten VIP seats and if he had disguised himself. They reached the private seating area, where the man explained that they could press a button whenever they wanted to bid. Cha Jin-hyuk told him not to enter unless called, and the man agreed, wishing them to enjoy their time. The door closed behind them, sealing them off from the rest of the market. The auction began, the room buzzing with anticipation. The auctioneer started announcing the items up for bid, his voice echoing through the room. People began placing their bids, the numbers climbing higher and higher. Cha Jin-hyuk mentioned he had brought something special, a summoning-type trinket he had bought for 350,000 gold. He noted that there weren't many things to buy, and Haryu agreed, adding that there were so many people there. Cha Jin-hyuk sensed that something was off, his instincts telling him that something wasn't right. Looking down at the lower floor, he saw that it was packed with people. He realized that something big was about to happen. As he took in the crowded space below, a loud voice announced the next item, pulling his attention back to the stage. Suddenly, Haryu's energy flared up, catching him off guard. He couldn't help but wonder what was going on with her. Before he could process it, Haryu jumped down from wherever she was, leaving him shouting after her in confusion. A faint voice echoed, claiming they were here, but it wasn't clear who or where. Haryu bolted straight to the stage, the voice growing louder, desperately pleading to be saved. She stopped near the covered item, the voice still crying out for help, but something felt off. Haryu reached out toward the item, but then hesitated, as if sensing something wasn't right. She called out, assuring whoever it was that she was coming. Haryu, with determination in her eyes, reached out further, declaring she was coming no matter what. But suddenly, guards appeared out of nowhere, like they were waiting for her. Without a word, they struck Haryu, their attack swift and unprovoked. She slid back, a grunt escaping her lips as she hit the ground. But Haryu wasn't one to stay down. She materialized her sword, her voice sharp as she commanded them to move. In a flash, her sword was sliced, leaving her weaponless. A voice boomed, furious that someone dared to touch the item he had his eyes on. Another voice chimed in, calling Haryu an arrogant young lady for her boldness. Cha Jin-hyuk stepped in, the pressure around him intense. He told them they should be the ones moving, asking if they knew who had laid hands on the item. The guard raised his sword, and the rich guy looked on, muttering about Ghostface. The rich guy with a gold tooth confirmed, asking if it was really Ghostface. Haryu pointed towards the item, saying something happened and she heard a voice coming from it. The auctioneer laughed it off, saying there was a small commotion when a great item was up for auction. Things could get too exciting. With a flourish, the auctioneer pointed and declared it was time to reveal the item. As the auctioneer revealed the item, Haryu's eyes widened in shock. That was hers. A sudden flashback hit her, memories flooding back like an unwanted dream sequence. It was a flower accessory, crafted in the style of her fallen tribe, the Oni. Haryu's fury ignited like a wildfire. How dare they sell an item from her tribe at this auction? Just as her anger peaked, a hand grabbed her shoulder, pulling her back from the edge. Cha Jin-hyuk leaned in, his voice steady and reassuring. Trust him, his gaze seemed to say. The auctioneer's voice boomed through the hall, announcing the start of the bidding war at 100,000 gold. Bids flew from every direction, the numbers climbing higher and higher. 150,000, 200,000, 250,000. Suddenly, a man with a gold tooth shouted out a bid of 1 million gold, silencing the room. The auctioneer was stunned, barely able to repeat the bid. 1 million gold. Were there any more bids? The gold-toothed man laughed, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. With this, another species would be added to his collection. He lamented not being able to taxidermy an Oni corpse, but perhaps this accessory would satisfy him for now. Just as he was admiring his new accessory, Haryu tensed up, ready to strike. She couldn't let that item fall into the wrong hands. But before she could make her move, he stepped in, stopping her. The auctioneer announced that if there were no more bids, the item would go for 1 million gold. The crowd gasped as he suddenly shouted out a bid of 3 million gold, leaving everyone stunned. Even the gold-toothed man couldn't believe what he had just heard. 3 million gold was an unbelievable amount. He repeated his bid, making it clear he was serious. If others couldn't match his bid, they should just back off. The room fell silent, the weight of his bid sinking in. No one dared to challenge his offer. The auctioneer, after a moment of hesitation, declared the item sold to him for 3 million gold. With a slam of the hammer, the deal was finalized, sealing his victory in this unexpected bidding war. The crowd buzzed with whispers, some wondering if he was the mysterious avatar, others shocked by his wealth. He couldn't help but worry if he had drawn too much attention to himself by ending the bid so dramatically. Deciding it was best to leave quickly, he told the auctioneer to pack the item as soon as possible. Some time later, with the item in hand, he prepared to leave the auction house. He held the flower item, feeling its strange energy. Haryu thanked him profusely, knowing how much it must have cost. He brushed it off, saying it wasn't his money anyway and they should thank Gold-Rich later. The flower began to glow, a soft light enveloping Haryu. A spirit emerged from the flower, hugging Haryu tightly and whispering a heartfelt thank you. Haryu looked at the spirit, her eyes filled with emotion as she realized the significance of what had just happened. As the spirit was finally released, Haryu's emotions overflowed. Everyone's salvation was at stake, but her personal vendetta burned just as fiercely. Cha Jin-hyuk finally understood Haryu's obsession. That hairpin held more than just sentimental value, it carried the soul of a dead Oni. Suddenly, a man lunged at Cha Jin-hyuk from behind, aiming to catch him off guard. Cha Jin-hyuk turned just in time, his eyes locking onto the attacker. With quick reflexes, he blocked the attack, and Haryu gasped in shock, recognizing the assailant. Haryu's expression shifted as she realized who was behind the sudden assault. Cha Jin-hyuk countered with a swift strike, demanding to know who the man truly was. The man smirked, revealing a gold tooth, and Cha Jin-hyuk's eyes narrowed in recognition. He was the same man from the auction, the one who had let him have the item. The gold-toothed man chuckled, unfazed by Cha Jin-hyuk's hostility, and reminded him of his generosity at the auction. Cha Jin-hyuk pointed his sword at the man, making it clear that the hairpin was non-negotiable, and warned him not to push his luck. The gold-toothed man burst into laughter, finding Cha Jin-hyuk's defiance amusing. He pointed dramatically, declaring that he no longer cared about the hairpin. Instead, he had a new prize in mind, taxidermying a real Oni. Haryu's anger flared at the man's words, her expression darkening with fury. With a fierce battle cry, Haryu charged at the gold-toothed man, ready to unleash her wrath. The gold-toothed man, unfazed, pulled out a massive hammer, preparing for the clash. The gold-toothed man swung his massive hammer with a grunt, but Haryu was already moving, dodging the attack with a swift sidestep. The hammer crashed into the ground, sending debris flying. Cha Jin-hyuk's voice cut through the tension, urging Haryu to stay calm and not act rashly. A sword whistled through the air, stopping just inches from Cha Jin-hyuk's face. The blade's edge glinted in the light, a silent threat hanging in the air. Cha Jin-hyuk barely flinched, swiftly leaning back to evade the sword's deadly kiss. The guard stepped forward, his stance confident as he declared himself as Cha Jin-hyuk's opponent. Cha Jin-hyuk quickly assessed his opponent, realizing the guard's skill level was on par with Hendrik's, if not more refined. Without hesitation, Cha Jin-hyuk activated his skill, Combat Foresight, ready to counter the guard's movements. Haryu wasn't far behind, her own skills flaring to life as she prepared to join the fray. Haryu analyzed the gold-toothed man's movements, finding them strong but slow. She saw an opening, a chance to counter with her Combat Foresight. With a swift motion, Haryu thrust her sword forward, aiming for the gold-toothed man's chest. The gold-toothed man quickly adjusted his grip on the hammer, ready to counter Haryu's attack. Suddenly, a green gas began to seep out from the hammer, spreading rapidly through the air. Haryu's eyes widened as she realized the gas was poisonous. She quickly covered her nose, holding her breath to avoid inhaling the toxic fumes. Just as Haryu struggled to hold her breath, a hand suddenly grabbed her face, making her panic even more. Before she could react, the fat guy slammed her down, her body hitting the ground hard. The fat guy leaned in, his voice dripping with arrogance as he reminded her that once she reached the 50th floor, she would realize all climbers had a trump card. He then revealed that the gas was an improved version of the numbing poison used in the goblin bastard's poison needles, turned into a gas that would leave her unable to lift a finger. Haryu, struggling, declared she wouldn't be finished by a mere poison and vowed to have her revenge as the last Oni. The fat guy, unimpressed, told her not to be too upset. He pulled out a knife, saying her life wouldn't end but she would have a new beginning. To make her obedient, he would cut her ligaments. As he stabbed down, he told her to know that it was an honor to live a new life as one of his collector's items. Suddenly, a shadow emerged through the gas, interrupting the fat guy's monstrous plan. In a swift move, the main character cut off the fat guy's arm, leaving him screaming in pain and shock. The main character calmly explained that the fat guy's poison didn't work on him, leaving the fat guy in disbelief and terror. With the fat guy still reeling from the shock, the main character didn't hold back. He bluntly told the fat guy that he was ugly and had no value, not even for taxidermy. He calmly declared that he would kill him. The fat guy screamed in agony, clutching his arm. Haryu, watching the scene, was left speechless, barely able to mutter his name. Haryu stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock and fear as she watched the scene unfold. The main character walked towards the fat guy, telling him to stop being so dramatic. He casually mentioned that he couldn't forget that he had lost an arm. Suddenly, a slash mark appeared on the main character, and a voice threatened to cut off his other arm. The guy moved swiftly, slashing past the main character with incredible speed. But the main character blocked the attack effortlessly. He complimented the guy's speed, admitting that if he had reacted a little later, it would have been bad. The guard was taken aback, wondering what had blocked his attack. He questioned if it was magic. The main character's fingers began to glow purple as he prepared his next move, declaring a 5-fingered soul bullet. A massive explosion erupted, sending the guard flying into the air. As the guard soared through the air, he couldn't help but be impressed. The main character was proficient in both sword and magic. He wondered if the main character had a hidden class. The guard felt an intense pressure, unlike anything he had ever experienced. He realized that the pressure he felt was similar to standing in front of a veteran high-floor climber. In a flash, the guard teleported behind the fat guy, leaving everyone stunned. The guard told the fat guy that the situation had changed and that he should retreat and tend to his injuries. The fat guy was shocked, unable to believe what he was hearing. Still shocked, the fat guy couldn't believe what he was hearing. A living Oni was right in front of him, and the guard wanted him to retreat? What a joke! Where could he even go? The guard wasn't having it. He pointed his sword at the fat guy, ready to enforce his orders. The guard reminded him of their contract. In exchange for protection, the fat guy had agreed not to interfere in fights. The fat guy shot back, reminding the guard that he shouldn't interfere either when he was in a fight. The guard gave him an intense glare, clearly not in the mood for arguments. He just wanted the fat guy to disappear. Realizing he was outmatched, the fat guy bolted away, muttering about how he couldn't take on the Oni. But then, he spotted Miho, the fox, and his eyes lit up. That was his. Without hesitation, he struck Miho, causing her to whimper in pain. Grabbing the flower, he made a run for it, declaring he would add this to his collection. Haryu wasn't about to let him escape. She bolted after him, determined to stop him. The guard, seeing the Oni, wondered if the duration of the gas-type poison was short. He attacked Haryu, declaring he wouldn't let her chase after the fat guy. But the protagonist, Cha Jinhyuk, blocked the guard's attack. Cha Jinhyuk made it clear that if you start a fight, you should finish it. The town was in chaos, buildings were being destroyed left and right. In an instant, the buildings were cut to pieces, the town was in ruins. The town was left in ruins, buildings reduced to mere fragments scattered across the landscape. Amidst the chaos, the protagonist and the guard engaged in a fierce battle, their movements a blur of speed and precision as they clashed. Swords collided in a flurry of sparks, each strike resonating with the intensity of their confrontation. The protagonist couldn't help but express his disbelief at the guard's skills, questioning why someone so talented would waste their abilities in such a place. The guard responded with a hint of pride, suggesting that being in such a place allowed him to encounter strong opponents like the protagonist. The protagonist scoffed, accusing the guard of being a coward who ran away out of fear of climbing higher. The guard's anger flared at the insult, his expression darkening with fury. With a powerful slash, the guard sent the protagonist staggering backward, his strength evident in the force of the blow. The guard charged at the protagonist, demanding to know what he truly understood about his situation. Energy slashes were hurled between them, each strike carrying the weight of their intense battle. A massive explosion erupted, the shockwave rippling through the air as their powers collided. The guard looked around, trying to locate the protagonist amidst the chaos. Suddenly, the protagonist appeared right beside him, declaring the guard's weakness with a calm certainty. With a swift and precise slash, the protagonist struck the guard, his blade moving with deadly accuracy. Blood spilled out, marking the end of their fierce confrontation as the protagonist stood victorious. With the battle finally over, the guard stood amidst the wreckage, his thoughts racing as he realized the place he had reached. The 431st floor, a milestone that should have brought triumph, but instead, it only brought more questions. As he looked around, the guard saw the true form of the tower, a place filled with fraud, deceit, and betrayal. This was not the glorious tower he had imagined, but a twisted reflection of humanity's darkest traits. His eyes widened as he witnessed the lowest form of humans, their actions slicing through his very soul. This was not the noble struggle he had signed up for. To make matters worse, he got betrayed by an ally, a bitter pill to swallow in this already grim reality. Overwhelmed by the disgusting nature of this place, the guard couldn't help but scream out his frustration. This place was supposed to be a beacon of hope, but it had turned into a nightmare. With a surge of intense sword aura, the guard attacked the protagonist, his anger boiling over. At least the humans here didn't hide their filthiness from each other, he thought, as he unleashed his fury. The protagonist swiftly sidestepped the guard's furious attack, narrowly avoiding the deadly swing. The force of the guard's missed strike shattered the ground beneath them, sending debris flying. The protagonist's eyes blazed with a mix of pain and fury as he recalled the bitter taste of betrayal and death, that awful feeling still fresh in his mind. The guard staggered back, stunned by the protagonist's sudden outburst, his mind racing to catch up with the unexpected turn of events. Seizing the moment, the protagonist launched a counterattack, his words cutting deep as he mocked the guard's weakness and lack of true strength. With a devastating punch, the protagonist sent the guard flying, his words echoing the guard's previous taunt, vowing to destroy those who betrayed him. The guard crashed into the ground, creating a massive crater on impact, his body barely moving. The guard groaned in pain, struggling to move as the protagonist stood over him, declaring that he would not run away like the guard had. Summoning his soul soldiers, the protagonist prepared for the final blow, his determination to destroy those betraying him burning brighter than ever. The guard screamed in terror as he realized the end was near, his fate sealed by his own betrayal. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a fat guy was running, muttering threats against the protagonist and someone he referred to as an oni bitch, his words filled with venom and hatred. Still running for his life, the fat guy spots the lights of the main street up ahead. He thinks he's got this, just a little more and he'll blend right into the crowd. No way anyone could find him then. He's almost there, victory in sight. A grin spreads across his face as he imagines his escape. But then, out of nowhere, his expression freezes. Something's not right. Before he can even process what's happening, Haryu appears out of nowhere and slices him in half. Just like that, his escape plan is over. Haryu barely spares him a glance as she walks away, telling him that's the end for him. No more collecting anything where he's going. But then, something catches her eye. She stops, intrigued by what she sees. A gold card lies on the ground, glinting under the streetlights. Haryu's eyes widen as she realizes what it is. Meanwhile, the guard is left wondering why the protagonist didn't finish him off. He's confused but also weirdly grateful. The protagonist asks if he still has something left in him, hinting at the guard's potential for revenge against those who wronged him. He tells the guard to crush them all, every last one of them. The guard smiles, promising to make the protagonist regret not killing him today. He vows to come find him once he's done. The protagonist just laughs, telling him he looks forward to it. No fear, just pure confidence. As the protagonist walks towards the door, Vulcan can't help but comment on how cool he's acting, even sparing his enemy like some kind of avenger. The protagonist tells him to shut up, not in the mood for his comments. Haryu comes running up, calling out to the protagonist. He's relieved to see her okay. Vulcan asks what happened to the fat guy. Haryu simply states she killed him, but there's something more on her mind. Haryu then pulls out a gold card, one of the fat guy's possessions, leaving everyone curious about its significance. Vulcan leans in, noticing the card's resemblance to one Haryu uses, while Cha Jin-hyuk examines it, mentioning its connection to the auction house but noting it's not for transactions. Cha Jin-hyuk explains that such items are usually just passes, leaving everyone wondering what this one could be for. A smile spreads across Cha Jin-hyuk's face as he reveals it's a pass for a high-ranked auction, hinting at the possibility of snagging a super rare item. Haryu looks down, mumbling to herself, seeming a bit off. Suddenly, Haryu bows deeply, apologizing for her earlier outburst and admitting she almost put everyone in danger. Cha Jin-hyuk gently pats her head, reassuring her that it's okay. He acknowledges how much her hairpin means to her and that he can handle this much, but she needs to keep something in mind. There are times when she must be indifferent for the sake of her revenge, he reminds her. Haryu nods, understanding the weight of his words. At the auction house, the door attendant is stunned to see the secret pass, immediately recognizing its value. Cha Jin-hyuk hands over the card, stating that the level of the auction matches the card's standard, and they are promptly ushered in. Inside, Vulcan notes that there aren't as many people as before, and Cha Jin-hyuk explains that since it's a secret pass, there won't be many who have it. The auctioneer takes the stage, announcing that the final item of the day is about to be revealed. The crowd buzzes with anticipation as the auctioneer asks if everyone is ready to see the main course. The room erupts with shouts of excitement, everyone eager to see what rare item is about to be unveiled. The room was buzzing with excitement, and Cha Jin-hyuk couldn't help but feel the energy. Everyone was on the edge of their seats, eagerly anticipating the big reveal. He too was curious about what was coming next. As the curtain slowly lifted, the crowd erupted with cheers and shouts, urging the auctioneer to reveal the item faster. The crowd murmured in confusion as a cage was revealed. Cha Jin-hyuk wondered if it could be a mystical creature or perhaps a divine beast. The auctioneer announced that a special finale was prepared for everyone, the last item of the auction. A figure was visible in the cage, but it was unclear what it was. Cha Jin-hyuk was taken aback, wondering what in the world these people were selling. The auctioneer revealed that the item was a dark elf slave that they had secretly captured. The dark elf glared intensely, her eyes filled with a murderous intent that sent shivers down the spines of those who met her gaze. Cha Jin-hyuk sensed an incredible murderous intent emanating from the dark elf. He assumed she didn't come here on good terms, so her anger was understandable. But something else caught his attention. Besides the murderous intent, he could sense pure mana at the level of a high elf. Cha Jin-hyuk knew that dark elves were a variant species exposed to demonic energy, and pure mana was a special trait of high elves, the opposite variant. The two couldn't coexist. Vulcan chimed in, saying it wasn't completely impossible. If someone forcibly exposed a high elf to demonic energy, it might be possible. Cha Jin-hyuk wondered if the four royalties were behind this. Cha Jin-hyuk couldn't help but think that the four royalties might be responsible for this dark elf's condition. The bidding started, with prices soaring from 1.5 million to 2 million gold in an instant. Suddenly, a bid of 5.5 million gold was placed, leaving everyone stunned. Just as the crowd was reeling from the insane bid, the dark elf locked eyes with an angel across the room, and you could feel the tension spike like a bad reality show reunion. Then, with the confidence of someone who always gets what she wants, Hamiel dropped the mic with a casual 5.5 million gold bid. Oh, and did we mention she's a Netzach rank angel? Because of course she is. The dark elf was not having it. She started shaking her cage like it was a snow globe, screaming Hamiel's name like she was the villain in a telenovela. She made it clear she'd rather walk barefoot on Lego than be sold to Hamiel, declaring she'd never be hers. Hamiel, meanwhile, just smiled like she'd already won the game and we were all just playing catch-up. The dark elf wasn't done though. She screamed a dramatic never, and promised Hamiel she'd be the first one she'd rip to shreds if she got the chance. Yikes, talk about holding a grudge.